Not far from Burka, a ship approached slowly, with a peculiar flag hanging on it, a cross of 5 circles. There is almost no one on the blue sea who wouldn't recognize this flag because it represents the ruler of the world, the upper power of marine, world government. This is Sky Island. On the deck of the ship, a CP0 member wearing a white cloak and wearing a white ceremonial hat was standing there, staring at the Sky Island Burka. Next to him, 4 other CP0 members were also standing. The direction of Vivre card pointing is here. There's no mistake, St. Mjasgard is here and CP9 traders may be hiding here too. A CPO member with Vivre card spoke quietly to the CP0 vice chief in front. Compared to the other 9 organizations from CP1 to CP9, CP0's internal system is completely different. Not only are they their top boss, but also the largest organization. CP1 to CP9 missions are almost always about exploring intelligence, but CP0 has only one mission, that is, to serve Tenryubito, always obey Tenryubito, protect Tenryubito. How many Tenryubito are there? Today, Holy Land has 19 Tenryubito family names. Even a rough calculation will put their number to be more than 100 people. 10 or 8 CP0s are obviously not enough to shelter the hundreds of Tenryubito. So the organization of CP0 is huge, including not only the members promoted from CP1 to CP9 but also those talented people who have been brainwashed since childhood. Their number is larger than all the other intelligence organizations put together. They are one of the main forces of world governance. CP0 is divided into 10 units, each of which is headed by a division captain, and on top of the 10 division captain, there are vice chief and chief, with great authority. How did CP9 traders get involved with the Sky Islanders? A CP0 member spoke in a low voice, with ruthless and indifferent eyes, but there was a little doubt in his voice. CP0 vice chief murmured, "No, there must be something else involved in this matter. 2 of our members were easily killed and there was not any news about that. This incident happens on the Gale Kingdom and we didn't even know how they were killed." As CP0 vice chief, he seldom goes out and spends most of his time on Marijoy. He is responsible for mobilizing CP0 to protect Tenryubitos going out to the sea. This special trip to the Sky Island was due to the unexpected death of 2 former members, and those who dared to kidnap a Tenryubito must not be ordinary people. Anyway, daring to kidnap Tenryubito is already a capital offense. A member of CP0 stood there, looking coldly at Burka Island in the distance. Sky Island, Burka. A moment after the emergence of the world government ship, the message reached Ross's ears. Knowing that kidnapping a Tenryubito would lead to CP0, Ross could not be unprepared. Long ago, he had ordered Burka's patrol team to patrol the outskirts of Burka for 24 hours and report it as soon as they encountered any ship coming towards them. At the moment, Ross is sitting in the palace, holding a spoon in his hand, feeding Robin whose arm has not yet fully recovered. The ship of world government, Prey, got hooked. Ross's eyes glittered when he heard Khalifa's report. Robin thought and murmured, "Maybe it's not that simple. The kidnapping of a Tenryubito combined with the previous Gale Kingdom incident, the people coming this time may not be easy to deal with. Even if they are not easy to deal with, we have to at least try." Ross slightly smiled and handed the spoon to Robin, saying, "The world government can't send all the CP0's main force for a Tenryubito. If a small number of troops want to rescue a Tenryubito from me, that's delusional." After feeding Robin another mouthful, Ross stood up and put the spoon in the bowl and said to Khalifa, "Okay, come on, I'll take care of it." "Yes." Khalifa nodded and went with him. Walking into the palace lobby, Lafitte and Law had already been waiting here, including the CP9 Kaku and Jabra. During this period Ross and the Giants were practicing. Kaku, Jabra, and others were not idle. They were also working hard and practicing. Several people made great progress. As Lafitte's strength has reached a certain level, his growth has slowed down. With Lafitte and Kaku joining hands, they have been able to fight with him and fight back. "Do we need to call the Giants?" Lafitte asked for Ross. Ross's eyes sparkled. "Girth and Goldberg are not needed. Let Haruden and others come. By the way, call over the left and right priests. The purpose of this time is to annihilate them, don't let any of them go." The left and right priests are the 2 most powerful Sky Islanders of Sky Island Burka at present. Because they are proficient in observation hockey, they also have a certain strength. "All right." Lafitte nodded with a smile and then his figure flashed and disappeared outside the palace. "We will go first." Ross looked at Law and Kaku and said calmly. He walked out of the palace with them and walked towards the shore of Burka, and soon came to the east bank of Burka. The world government ship was almost docked at this time, and at the moment of landing, 5 figures on the ship flashed past and fell to the shore of the east coast. Then, the government's battle staff quickly lowered the rope ladder and came down one by one from the boat. A sense of oppression gradually spread over the Burka Island. Don't hide there, come out. CP0 Vice Chief stood at the forefront, looking ahead. His eyes flashed and he suddenly spoke, looking in one direction. When his voice fell, in the direction behind the white island cloud, Ross and Kaku and others slowly walked out and came toward them. Kaku calmly looked at his former boss, and the 5 members of CP0 and said, "We just arrived. It's you who are sneaking around." Law was carrying the devil's knife on his shoulder and looked calmly and indifferently at the people from the world government. When seeing Ross and others come out, the faces of CP0 members slightly changed. As CP0 members, they recognized Ross and Law. "So it's you, Ghost Hand Ross. The kidnapping of Tenryubito was originally related to you. This Sky Island seems to have become your territory, which is quite unexpected." Vice Chief of CP0 stared at Ross. Ross had killed a Tenryubito in Sabodi Archipelago before, and he has already been listed on the elimination list of CP0. He has become one of their missions. Now it seems that instead of 2 missions, the 3 missions are combined into 1 mission. CP9 Trader Clearance, rescuing Tenryubito, and the eradication of the Ghost Hand Pirates. There will be many things that you didn't expect. Ross stood on a soft island cloud as he looks towards the CP0 members and said with a calm voice. One of CP0's division captains stood behind Vice Chief and said coldly, "As long as you are exterminated, everything can be handled slowly." A CP0 member next to him glanced over the Ross and others and said, "Is this it? It seems that your journey will end here." Ross only had 4 men on his side, and this time they had 5 men in the main force alone, not to mention the hundreds of government subordinates who had come with them. And, among the 5 of them, besides Vice Chief, there is another division captain. The 3 other will be enough to capture Kaku and Jabra. The 2 CP9 traitors and the Surgeon of Death Law will be defeated by the division captain. As for the most powerful of them, Ross, their Vice Chief, is also enough to deal with him, and the Chief will not let him run away. This is a one-sided situation. Do it. CP0's Vice Chief decisively issued the order after judging the strength gap between the enemy and them. Now Demon Sheriff Lafitte and Devil Child Nico Robin are not here. He intends to make a quick decision and take down Ross quickly so as to avoid some extraneous problems. The rest of the CP0 members also know this point. Since the Sky Island has become Ross's territory, they may have to face Sky Island's forces later. Although they also have hundreds of government elites and have the strength to defeat thousands of enemies themselves, in the end, it is better to avoid problems by making quick decisions. Whiz. Almost immediately after the order was issued, the 5 main members of CP0 charged towards their opponents. 3 of them went towards Law, Kaku, and Jabra, while Vice Chief jumped up and charges into Ross. His right foot suddenly turned into an eagle claw as it slammed toward Ross. Zone Bird Fruit, Goshawk form. Ross's face is expressionless as he punched back and the power of distortion bursts out. The air around them is stirring with the power of distortion, and all the Sky Island clouds began to collapse by this power. CP0 Vice Chief instantly came under tremendous pressure as he faced Ross's punch, but he soon recovered and covered his entire body with armament hockey to resist Ross's punch while his sharp eagle claws touched Ross's fist. Ross's fist instantly hardened, showing a dark armament hockey shape. Although CP0 Vice Chief's physique is extraordinarily strong with astonishing claw strength, and even his armament hockey is stronger than Ross, but under the impact of the power of distortion, most of this claw power was eliminated before it grabbed Ross's fist. Although some sparks splash around, but it could not leave any trace on Ross's arm. Blocked. CP0 Vice Chief did not expect Ross's fist to be so hard. He thought that even if he could not penetrate Ross's fist, he could at least leave a serious wound on Ross's fist, but his claw could not break Ross's skin at all. Ross snorted and punched forward. Bang! CP0 Vice Chief could no longer resist Ross's power and he flew backward. In midair, his body suddenly turned into a giant hawk, and after hovering a little, he turned into a form of half eagle and half human and rushed towards Ross. "Are you the highest chief of CP0? It seems that your strength is only so-so." Ross watched the CP0 Vice Chief rushing towards him indifferently. Instead of letting his opponent attack from above, Ross bent his hands and slanted them from the top left and the top right, staggering them in front of him. Distortion net. The power of distortion cut through the void as if space was instantly smashed. The staggering power of distortions forms a large net that directly covers the head of CP0 Vice Chief. Watching Ross use this trick to deal with him, CP0 Vice Chief's eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of cold anger. Rankyaku, Tempest Kick, Hawk Strike. His eagle's clawed feet kicked up fiercely, splitting several horrible chops in the air in an instant, intertwined with Ross's distortion net. CP0 Vice Chief sprinted forward with armament hockey attached to his hands and tore apart the rigid invisible web. Shigen, finger gun. He bent his fingers and his forefinger stretched out. The armament hockey instantly wrapped around his finger and turned it into a steel cast finger which slammed towards Ross. Ross's eyes were indifferent and he pointed out his backhand finger. Bang! Two fingers collided in the air, bursting out with their powers, causing CP0 Vice Chief to fly backward by several meters, and Ross also backed away. Apparently, they were equal in this power contest. In this short encounter, Ross has almost understood the strength of CP0 Vice Chief. His strong body is almost comparable to Golden Lion Shiki in physique. His speed and hockey are also similar to him, but his attack power is weaker than Shiki. His attack powers are close to Aokiji or Kizaru, but still a little weaker. CP0 Vice Chief, who flew backward by several meters, steadily looked at Ross in midair and said, "No wonder you can escape from a Marine Admiral with this power." Ross didn't respond and rushed toward him, however. At this time, a division captain who has been on the sidelines has shot towards Ross. He judged that it is difficult for the Vice Chief to defeat Ross quickly. Even if the current situation is in deadlock, he may not win in the end. For the CP0, the mission completion is the most important thing and the process is not important. As long as Ross is defeated here, it will complete their mission. Tekai, Iron Body, Heavy Fist. CP0 Division Captain is a purely physical body powerhouse. He walked to the side of Ross with Geppo, Moonwalk, and punched. His fist was covered with armament hockey as it fell toward Ross. At the same time, CP0 Vice Chief is also rushing over. Ross's face remained unchanged and punched both sides. Buzz. Two power of distortion, like a visible shockwave, burst out on both sides under Ross's fists and hit the Vice Chief of CP0 and the Division Captain. CP0 Division Captain's strength is obviously weaker than the Vice Chief's. He is weaker in both hockey and the body. Under Ross's attack, he immediately flew out. Ching. CP0 Vice Chief took advantage of the Division Captain's involvement and broke through Ross's power of distortion and gripped Ross's fist once again. This time it also produced a spark and his claws broke through Ross's armament hockey, but when he touched Ross's skin, he only left a white mark. How can it be? CP0 Vice Chief had a look of surprise on his face. Before, he could not hurt Ross. Now, with the Division Captain's involvement, he broke through Ross's armament hockey but still failed to hurt the other party. This is somewhat surprising for him. Ross's armament hockey is not strong, but his body and skin tenacious levels are far beyond his expectations. Nothing is impossible. Ross's eyes were indifferent and his right hand snapped back and pulled at CP0 Vice Chief's claw. The CP0 Vice Chief's claws were retracted, but he flipped in midair and slammed two punches at Ross and showcased Marine's Rokushiki's Tekai, Iron Body, which covered his fist and it was also covered with armament hockey. Ross crossed his arms in front of him and flew backward, taking the chief with him. Bang! The power of distortion broke out and hit the Vice Chief, dropping him from the sky, and he suddenly broke into the thick island cloud. Maximum value in physical enhancement, coupled with his tenacious talent and rock talent. Ross's armament hockey is much weaker than the Vice Chief, but his skin is blunt and almost non-human in power and durability. Whiz! Whiz! CP0 Division Captain and Vice Chief rose to the skies and again stormed toward Ross. During the brief confrontation, due to the involvement of the Division Captain, Ross was hit on the shoulder by Vice Chief's claw, but this claw only left 3 blood marks which swiftly healed. Ross's terrifying tenacious skin and resilience made CP0's Vice Chief and Captain brow wrinkled. In this case, it is almost impossible to win against Ross in a short time. Light burst. Ross's eyes were cold and after getting his shoulder injured, he spits out a word. A bright light pierced the eyes of the Chief and Captain instantly. He rushed forward and went straight to CP0 Division Captain and punched him. The division captain's eyes were still painful, but he was able to sense Ross coming towards him, and he folded his arms in front of him and covered them with armament hockey and tekai, iron body, trying to resist, but he still fell from the sky. Bang! 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 The vice chief responded much faster than the division captain did because he was a physically strong man, and his instinct for close combat fighting was much stronger than him. Even though his eyes were severely affected, the vice chief still responded to Ross's onslaught in a series of ways. The two men struggled in the air for a short time. Tobushigen. Mitsubachi, flying finger gun, 3 plectrums. CP0 division captain once again rushed out from the island cloud. His clothes were broken and his figure looked beaten, but he was not seriously injured. His eyes narrowed and he attacked Ross. Ross could not resist the flying shigen, finger gun, with his pure flesh. Without hesitation, he unleashed the wall of distortion to resist the flying shigen, finger gun, coming from behind, while he continues to attack CP0 vice chief. The effects of light burst and sonic boom have played an excellent role in dealing with admirals such as Aokiji, but in the face of these two, the CP0 vice chief and division captain, who are only good at close combat, the effect is not as good as before. That's what Ross expected. The vice chief's strength is not much different from a marine admiral. In the case of one-on-one against him, it takes a long time to get the winner. If you add a slightly weaker division captain, then the difficulty increases again. But, because of the existence of the rock and tenacious talents, these two people who are almost purely physical attack types are not as powerful as the Golden Lion Shiki's sword arts. They would also not win over him easily. Ross is stuck in a deadlock on one side, and in a short time, it's hard to tell the winner from the loser, while the situation on the other side is gradually turning to the one-sided situation. You should be very clear about the consequences of betraying the government. One of the CP0 members looked at Kaku indifferently and kept attacking to defeat Kaku. Even though Kaku has improved a lot in the past half-month on the Sky Island, before all of them could not defeat two CP0 members together, now he is fighting one-on-one and he can't defeat him alone. As for Jabra, the same is true. He can barely defend alone, but as time goes on, he will gradually lose. On the other side, Law is also fighting using his Devil Fruit ability. Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law, I've read your information. You have eaten the Surgeon Devil Fruit. With this ability, if you are willing to work for the government, I can spare your life. Don't waste your breath. Law looked coldly at the CP0 member in front of him. Now, hundreds of government elites have gathered on the shore on the government's battleship, including Marine Rear Admiral level figures, waiting for orders from the CP0. Do it. Be quick. A CP0 member ordered. Although the situation was clearly in their favor, the sooner battle was over, the better. They also have to rescue a Tenryubito. Under the order of CP0, hundreds of government elites echoed with one voice and they all held their weapons. They surrounded the Ghost Hand pirates with cold faces and joined forces with CP0 to completely defeat Kaku and others. But, almost at this time, a handful of yellow sand suddenly spread from a distance, then turned into a terrifying wave as high as tens of meters, whistling over the entire coast. Sand? The government's elite and CP0's members' face changed slightly. Someone snorted and pulled out a sword from his waist and charged into the sand waves, slamming out a sword and smashing the sand waves that were tens of meters high. But, before he could get happy, the yellow sand suddenly gathered behind him and shaped into a giant 10 meters tall, which also had a sand soldier with him that fell down on him. The attacker got buried in the cloud and his life and death remain unknown. The audience was shocked. Road raised his hand to the sand soldier, opened his mouth and looked ahead at the elite government and CP0 members, and his eyes showed the excitement of preparing for a big fight. Is this the army of the world government? I am, from the new giant pirates, the giant of the sand, Road. Come and try this. With his roar, the yellow sand gathered in the sky and turned into a huge armor of sand. With a terrible 40-meter sand sword in his hand, he swept fiercely against the government member. Not good. CP0 members saw the situation and their faces changed. One of them gave up on pursuing Kaku and swiftly shifted his direction and kicked out that created a huge arc of energy that can withstand the huge sword of sand. The CP0 member frowned when a giant emerged with a Logia ability. Giant? They could get this kind of fighting powers after eating a Logia fruit? But that's not going to change your ending. That arc of energy blocked the giant sword of sand. Two of his companions are enough to deal with Kaku and Jabra, and he can deal with this giant. But, Before he could attack, a silver steel double-edged battle axe hovered over from a distance and smashed into the scene. Several government elites nearby did not even scream but were smashed into a mass of flesh by the huge battle axe. The huge battle axe liquefied rapidly and became a silver shining metal, flowing in one direction and joined with the figure coming out of that direction. "That's a lot of people, let me be your opponent." Metal giant Stanson grinned, under the sun's mapping, his teeth are filled with heart-rending terrifying metallic silver. When Stanson appeared, not only the 3 CP0 other division captains but also CP0 vice chief and the division captain, who were fighting with Ross, were stunned. At their level of strength, they can naturally see how strong the two giants are. Their presence here almost completely leveled this completely one-sided battlefield. Another giant with Logia powers. No, it should be a special paramecia. How can such battle force come into being? The 3 other CP0 captains are no longer as calm as they were before. As for the government's elite, the giant with an armor of the sand is terrible. The giant of the sand is tens of meters high, and now there is another metal giant, all covered with metallic silver. Their faces is full of cold sweat and they feel soft in their legs. One of the soldiers, holding the fire guns, wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and whispered, "There shouldn't be a third one." As soon as this sentence came out, there was silence all around him and dozens of people next to him all cast a terrifying look at him. Crack. As if to confirm his bad luck mouth, a ray of lightning condenses in the void and turned into a full-body thunderbolt, which is held in the hands of a giant with a height of dozens of meters. The giant came down from the sky with a battle axe wrapped in thunder and lightning and smashed it into the scene. The thunder and lightning instantly intertwined into a power grid and surged in all directions. Bang! Almost instantly, the elite forces of the world government fell in pieces, and they had little resistance in front of the thunderstorm. In a blink of an eye, hundreds of government elites close to each other spat out black smoke and fall to the ground, and a burnt smell slowly drifted away in a silent battlefield. The whole scene was silent, leaving only the sound of silk currents. Ross and the vice chief's fight had stopped. Ross was suspended in midair, his slightly broken white overcoat fluttering gently in the wind. His eyes were calm and indifferent, without any surprise in them, as if everything that had happened has been expected. Both CP0 vice chief and the division captain's expressions have become extremely ugly. When Metal Giant and the Sand Giant appeared, there was still a possibility of fighting on their side, but when Haruden emerges with the force of thunder, it means that the two sides' forces are completely reversed. "We can't win. Withdraw." The CP0 vice chiefs frowned and judged the current situation, and he came to the conclusion that it is almost impossible for them to win, and he issued. But before his orders were conveyed, 3 more men appeared on the battlefield, namely the right and left magistrates of the Sky Island Burka and Demon Sheriff Lafitte. "Here we are. Now it's our turn." Ross calmly looked at the CP0 vice chief and many other government elites, and his voice suddenly turned cold, which made people feel as if their bones were freezing. "Let the fight begins. Don't let anyone leave here." Whiz. The moment his voice fell, Ross's figure suddenly flashed as he charged towards CP0 vice chief. His right hand's 5 fingers were closed and the power of distortion was fully stimulated. He used his armament hockey to the extreme and punched his opponent. The vice chief was forced to parry the attack, and his talons connected with Ross's fist. Ching! During the spark splash, the vice chief's body was slightly sunken, while Ross turned his body, volleyed one leg and kicked it in the vice chief's leg. The vice chief toppled over to one side, while his steel-like eagle wings swept toward Ross, waving a chop that tore the air. Ross's expressionlessly grabbed and held the wing attack in his hand, and as if he had grasped a whip, he flicked it backward toward the CP0 division captain. Bang! CP0 division captain had intended to attack Ross, but he was swept away by Ross's counterattack on the chief and flew backward. On the way back, a white, lightning-shimmering axe slammed into his back. Armed Tekai, iron body. The division captain's face changed dramatically, and he was unable to avoid the coming strike and was forced to use Tekai, iron body, and armament hockey to cover his body to meet with Haruden's thunderbolt axe. Bang! As a giant fighter, Haruden's own strength is extremely strong. He can compete against the 10,000-ton weight attack used by Don Quixote family elite member with his physical strength alone. Now with the support of Rumble Fruit, his strength is soaring. The axe fell, crushing the armament hockey of the division captain and cutting his Tekai, iron body, muscles and leaving a deep black blood groove behind his back. It hurts, this strong, because he is a strong pure physical body expert. CP0 Division Captain has not lost the battle of strength yet. He fell into the island cloud, bounced up violently, gritted his teeth and looked at Haruden. He rushed out and came to Haruden, passing through with a note of Shigen, finger gun. Haruden was indifferent to it. His huge body suddenly turned into a thunder arc and he disappeared from the view. When he appeared again, he came behind the division captain and grabbed him in the palm of his hand. Lightning strike. Crack. 5 extremely thick thundercurrents, centered on Haruden's huge palm, snapped apart, then suddenly closed back, mercilessly intertwined in the center of his palm, and the brilliant light pierced the people's eyes who looked directly at it and blinded them for a moment. The division captain was still hit by thunder attack even with the full body application of Tekai, iron body, and armament hockey. His clothes were broken and his hairs were completely burnt. Cough, cough, it was totally unexpected that Haruden, who was so huge in size, could still have that degree of speed and reaction. The division captain coughed violently and struggled hard to get out of Haruden's palm. Vigorous fighter, Haruden looked down at the division captain who was gasping violently and said, "But Captain asked for total annihilation. As a soldier, it's worth dying on the battlefield." Haruden turned his right hand and pressed his huge palm to the next, and a terrifying thunderbolt several meters thick struck down again, causing countless people to be shocked. The giant who is in charge of thunder is like the god of thunder. The limelight is stolen by boss Haruden. Road watched Haruden dealing horrible thunderstrikes one after another, and he could not help but grin as he stared at the elite soldiers of the government. He roared and his body started to get enlarged again, from 50 or 60 meters to 70 or 80 meters. The horrible armor of sand condenses in his outer body. His hands were raised and suddenly the sand gathers all over the sky, turning into a huge blade of sand in the air, and he swept it down on the members of the government. What the hell is? Damn it! Is this hell? The elite soldiers of the government watched this scene and all of them had a chill crawled on their backs. They had hardly fought in any war. In the face of dozens of giant sand soldiers whose widths exceeded several meters and whose lengths were nearly 40 meters, few of them could resist falling from the sky. The huge blade of sand fell from the sky with a devastating blow, and in a flash, this attack almost wiped out nearly 70% of the hundreds of government elites. The rest are either injured, or they barely have the strength to block the giant sandman attack on them. You are rushing to get in the limelight faster than Haruden. Metal Giant stood nearby and watched the scene. He couldn't help speaking to Road. He was dealing with the captain of the CP0 team at the moment. The CP0 captain's weapon was a sword. After colliding with him one after another, he suddenly pulled him in front of him. The sword in his hand stabbed in the giant's abdomen. However, even with the armament hockey coating the sword, it only penetrated a little bit of skin and only the tip of the sword was buried in the giant's body. Compared with the giant body, the wound created by the sword tip cannot even be counted as an injury. As a special Paramecia metal attribute fruit user, his body can be turned into a liquid flow metal and can also be turned into a high hardness body that is as strong as sea stone. The giants themselves are extremely strong, and with a little armament hockey covering their body, their defense has reached an appalling level. This attack, it's a lot worse than Captain's fist. The metal giant stared at the CP0 captain and snorted. The stabbed area suddenly liquefied, swallowing the other party's sword and spreading toward the other party's body. The CP0 captain face changed dramatically. He did not expect this level of defense on Stanson's body. He did not expect that the giant can harden his body to this degree. His sword was swallowed up and he is forced to retreat. Among the 3 giants, the metal non-Logia giant is the weakest, but as a giant whose original spirit is extremely strong, the power of metal attribute fruit is fully exerted by him. 1,000 metal needles. The shouted angrily at the CP0 captain, and his entire body suddenly liquefied into hundreds of sharp swords, all wrapped in silk armament hockey, bursting out. For him, it was similar to a needle, but for ordinary human beings, the hundreds of needles were like sharp swords, like a dense rain of swords, covering the entire front. And each of these swords is equivalent to the full force of the giant. Armed Tekai, iron body. The face of the CP0 captain has changed dramatically. Because the attack coverage is too large, and the distance is too close and fast, he has no time to escape. He has to use Tekai, iron body, and armament hockey. Ding ding. The dense rain of swords was like bullets from a gun, and they struck him hard, causing sparks to fly as he flew backward, and then the sound of the piercing steel gradually appeared. Even though his armed Tekai, iron body, was strong, it could not withstand the continuous intensive blows. His armament hockey was gradually broken and the swords left bloodstains on him. Finally, when the swords finally stopped shooting like a bullet, the captain figure was backed by 100 meters away from his original position. There were blood marks and blood holes all over his body. Although not deep, but they were extremely frightening. Only at this level, he looked coldly at the distance. His body was much shorter than the metal giant. He controlled the contraction of his skin and muscles and used life return, Seimei Kikon, forcing all the bloodstains and caves to stop bleeding. Still alive, I didn't expect you to survive this move. Stanson looked at the CP0 captain and he said with an unchanged face, "How about another one then?" At the moment his voice fell, the swords that were scattered all over the place stood up instantly, surrounding the CP0 captain in the center and stormed towards him under the dramatic change of his face. On the other side, Lafitte teamed up with Law to defeat another CP0 division captain. As for the two priests, they joined forces with Kaku to completely suppress the last CP0 division captain. Jabra, on the other hand, pursued the elites of government who tried to escape from Road. It seems that my subordinates are still stronger. Ross and the vice chief confronted each other fiercely in the air above 100 meters, and while facing each other, they both paid attention to the battle below. The vice chief's face has become extremely ugly. He originally intended to annihilate Ross and his ghost hand pirates. He did not expect Ross's side to have this level of combat power. The situation was completely reversed. Boom. Ross took advantage of the influence of the other party's words and the battle situation below and punched with the power of distortion through the other side's arm's defense and hit him between his legs. The vice chief's face instantly turned purple and sauce and he retreated. Ross had a hard time grasping the vice chief's flaws. He would naturally not let him go easily. His eyes were cold and his legs swept obliquely. After being blocked, Ross hit in the front again. Bang! 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 The vice chief fell into an extremely disadvantageous position under the storm-like attacks of Ross. He could only be beaten passively. After defending against Ross dozens of times, his defense was finally broken by Ross and an opportunity presented itself to Ross. Ross did not hesitate. He pushed forward with his hands together and hit him in his chest with the power of distortion. Puff! The vice chief spewed blood from his mouth and his entire figure rolled down from the sky and smashed into the island cloud below. In this world, battle between the strong, except for swordsmen, will almost take a long time, because the body and hockey are all strong enough to a certain extent. Not a single move can determine life and death and victory or defeat. A single or two flaws are difficult to control the battle situation. However, having suffered Ross's attack, the balance of victory and defeat between the two has become completely tilted. Originally Ross had a slightly lower chance of winning, but now it is completely reversed with Ross now occupying an absolute advantage. Haruden. When the vice chief landed in the island cloud, Ross rushed down and shouted at Haruden not far away. Haruden understood something as he left aside the beaten CP0 division captain, who had fallen into defeat. He threw out the thunderbolt axe in his hand and threw it to the place where the CP0 vice chief fell. Cracking. The axe of thunder falls down and instantaneously turns into an interweaving of thunder streams in the sky. It centers on the landing point and turns into a convergence of dense thunder nets. At last, it condenses into a line and pours into the holes of island cloud ruthlessly. The CP0 vice chief, who had endured Ross's blow, was hit by this horrible thunderstorm, and his hairs were completely burnt. Even when he used the armament hockey, he could not resist the attack. Vice chief. The surviving CP0 members, as well as the government soldiers, could not help but panic seeing this scene. No one expected that they would encounter such situation on the mission to rescue the Tenryubido from Sky Island. It's over. Ross's eyelids flashed with a cold light, and at the moment when the lightning flow disappeared, he just rushed into the island's cloud pothole, opened the wall of distortion and punched the CP0 vice chief. Although Haruden's blow did not cause any serious injury to the vice chief body because of his strong physique and armament hockey, it made his opponent's body temporarily paralyzed by thunder current, and Ross wanted this paralysis effect. Bang! Due to the short-term paralysis of his body, the CP0 vice chief was forced to put his iron-like wings in front of him to resist Ross's attack. Ross's power of distortion itself also has paralysis characteristics, which were not obvious before because of the other party's strong physical strength, but it is now fully reflected. With one blow, CP0 vice chief's arms became numb and sour. Bang! Ross punched out again, pushing him deeper into the island cloud. The power of distortion is spurred to the extreme, and Ross showed no mercy in the power of distortion is constantly superimposed as he continuously punched him. Can't go on like this. CP0 Vice Chief felt his arms were becoming more and more numb, and he was gradually beginning to lose his consciousness. He tried to get rid of the current situation, but Ross carefully designed the situation, and it will be next to impossible for him to get out of this situation alive. Deep in the island clouds and facing Ross's attack, he had no room to move. In the face of Ross's fist, he can only continue to resist. The only advantage he has is that the island cloud is not so hard. Even though Ross kept burying him deeper into the cloud, his back was not too badly impacted, but this could not save the situation. Bang! 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 Ross did not know how many punches he had delivered. They fell straight in the island cloud of Sky Island. Finally, they made a hole through the island cloud of Sky Island Burka from top to bottom, pierced the clouds below, and came out below the White Sea. CP0 Vice Chief's mouth is constantly overflowing with blood. His arms have already withdrawn from the shape of the wings, and the soft mass of bones was broken into several sections, and he is seriously injured. It was hard to get out of his current predicament. He immediately struggled to display Geppo, moonwalk, and tried to escape. But his wings have been broken by Ross. How can there be a chance for him to escape? Ross did not use distortion fist anymore. The high intensity and high load continuous punching just now imposed a heavy burden on himself, and he had almost reached his limit. Distortion. Heavy pressure. Ross glared indifferently at the Vice Chief while holding him with both hands, and suddenly the gravity pressure on them increased by nearly 10 times, and the two men immediately fell in a straight line towards the blue sea 10,000 meters below them. Falling from a height of 10,000 meters is already terrifying. Now with 10 times the gravity, the two are like two meteors, breaking the void and falling straight down towards the blue sea. The Vice Chief finally showed a panicked look on his face, and he used his all to try and break free, but the gravity distortion completely contained his seriously injured body, and he wasn't able to get away. Finally, the two fell from the Sky Island and towards the blue sea at a very fast speed, and 100 meters away from the blue sea, Ross threw the Vice Chief into the sea and buffered himself. Bang! In such a situation, even the Vice Chief couldn't stabilize his falling body with Geppo, moonwalk, and he slammed into the sea and instantly made a few hundred meters waves. Even if he tried his best to use Tekai, iron body, and armament hockey, he still couldn't resist the impact, and his spine broke in an instant. Crash! Ross's body slowed down from 100 meters in the midst of the splash and stopped at a position 10 meters away from the sea. At the same time, he opened the wall of distortion and excluded all the waves and water around him. As the waves gradually subsided, the Vice Chief was no longer visible on the sea. Ross was suspended in midair, slightly gasping and looking down at the sea. After a few seconds, Ross's ear rang with a clear system sound. World Government Secret Intelligence Agency, CP0 Vice Chief Il has been killed, receiving a reward, 110 talent proficiency points, 1 free talent point. Listening to the voice, while confirming that the CP0 Vice Chief was dead, Ross exhaled and a smile appeared on his face. Vice Chief of CP0 did not disappoint him at all, and he got a high reward from hunting him. It is extremely difficult to kill a man of such an existence. Even a Marine Admiral might not be able to kill such an existence, and the opposite is also true, and it is almost impossible to meet someone at this level. First, he seized the flaw, then he expanded the flaw, and then he relied on Harridan's assistance and let the other party fall into an absolute disadvantage situation where he could only resist. Finally, relying on the power of distortion, the flaw continues to expand, and finally make up for the fatal hit of falling into the sea. If any problems arise in any link of Ross's plan, the other party would have escaped by the virtue of the ability of the Eagle Fruit, which can fly at an undisputed speed in the air. Even Ross is inferior to that speed. Whiz! Ross slowed down the power of distortion in his body a little bit, and without looking for the CP0 Vice Chief, he looked up at the sky, and flashed up and flew back towards the Sky Island. At the moment on the Sky Island, the battle has gradually come to an end. Harridan steadily suppressed the CP0 division captain even after helping Ross, this time without giving the other party a chance to breathe, and he finally killed him. In addition, the first to end the battle is Lafitte. After killing his opponent, he and Law still have some stamina left, but the two did not intervene in any battle, but instead stood in the side, keeping the encirclement, not letting anyone escape. It's an excellent battle experience for everyone to fight against the government elites and the CP0 members. Finally, When Ross returned to the Sky Island, most of the battles were over, leaving only Metal Giant Stanson, who had not yet fully defeated his opponent. Speed is indeed one of his weaknesses. Although the CP0 captain has been seriously injured, he keeps avoiding him. They have a feeling that neither of them can do anything about each other. Ross looked at it for a moment, but he didn't show any other expression. He didn't expect Metal Giant to have any more speed. It was a Metal Giant, not a Transformer. Strictly speaking, the weapon fruit of Baby 5 should be considered as the upper-level devil fruit of the metal attribute fruit. The weapon that the body can project is not only cold weapons but also hot weapons. That fruit can produce a kind of jet device of speed type to increase the speed. Bang! Bang! Eventually, the CP0 captain died in Metal Giant's hands and was cut into numerous pieces he was surrounded by and could not escape, plus his stamina was exhausted. Your speed is a little slower, it's holding you back. After Stanson killed the CP0 captain, he recovered his shape and touched the back of his head with a slight sense of shame. No harm. Ross doesn't mind saying, your fruit is not good at one-on-one battle. If you work with Haruden and Road, it may have some unexpected effects. The giant regiment created by him is not a type of solo combat in itself, but a one-to-many weapon of war, and can be freely combined with each other to form a special battle form. CP0 Vice Chief physical strength and hockey were among the best, and he could withstand Haruden's lightning strike in perfect condition, but if that lightning strike is combined with the metal attribute fruit's sword strike, the power will almost be superimposed and he may not be able to resist it. Same. If the sand armor is placed outside the Metal Giant, under the multiple defenses, he may be able to run wild in the Marine headquarters and even demolish the Marine base under the eyes of Marine Admiral. Oh, I understand. Stanson nodded his head when he heard Ross's words. Before Ross's training, he had been a one-on-one combat expert. He had not been able to work with Road or Haruden. Although each of the giants is a strong fighting force, but there are also ways to form battle cooperation between each other. Often 3 or 5 people form a group. They can build a very strong local fighting force. Now after eating devil fruit, their personal strength has increased sharply, but they have forgotten these means of the local battlefield. Left priest, you go and clean up the battlefield. Ross looked at Burka's left priest and gave an order to the other party and turned to look at the shore, which had a broken government ship. The ship's flanks seemed to have been hit by sand soldiers, destroying a large area. Let's look around, the government's ships may have good things, hee. Lafitte came to Ross and stood crookedly with a mahogany cane in his hand, staring at the government ship, his eyes twinkling. Ross Kenbenshoku swept the ship, confirmed that there was no one on it, and he walked towards it. The world government ship. This is a large ship, enough to accommodate nearly 1,000 people, and there are many internal rooms, but because Ross does not intend to keep the ship, he swept through the rooms one by one and the walls were destroyed directly. Ross and Lafitte and others searched separately and quickly swept the ship over. They found almost nothing of value. Ross is not surprised either. After all, this ship came here with a rescue mission. However, in one of the rooms on the ship, Ross found a large number of books and various materials. Although he was not interested in books, he kept the books in the room and sent them out of the ship. Robin injuries are not good yet, so she can't sort out the data for the time being, but Khalifa can also do these kinds of things for the time being. Move back. With his ability, he destroyed the ship's deck and pulled out a large number of materials and books along with the whole room, placed them on the ground of Burka Beach, and asked Road to move them to the palace. At that moment, there were some fragmented hulls in the rear, and suddenly there was a sound from Den Den Mushi. Puru 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 puru. Along with the voice of Den Den Mushi, there was the voice of Lafitte. Captain Ross. Ross turned around and saw Lafitte coming out of the ship, holding a Den Den Mushi, which was making constant noise, and handing it over to him with a look of inquiry. Ross had an unexpected look on his face. He took over the Den Den Mushi and looked at it twice. After a little reflection, Ross picked up the microphone and connected the Den Den Mushi. What's the situation? Did you found him? From the other side of the Den Den Mushi came a calm, ordinary and plain voice, which showed a superior momentum. Ross vaguely guessed who was on the other side of the Den Den Mushi and said plainly, if you mean Vice Chief of CP0, unfortunately, you can't see him anymore. The voice on the Den Den Mushi on the other side became silent. About 2 seconds later, a very cold, apparently different voice came along, accompanied by a very depressing atmosphere. Who are you? My identity should not be so hard for you to guess. Ross said in an indifferent voice, He basically confirmed who was on the other side of the Den Den Mushi, the core of the world government, the supreme ruler on the bright side. Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Less than 2 seconds after Ross's voice passed, a third extremely cold voice came from the Den Den Mushi. Ghost Hand, Ross, it was you who kidnapped Mjosgard. There are very few people in the world who dare to do anything to a Tenryubito and can kill CP0 Vice Chief. Yonko, 4 emperors, won't do such a boring thing as kidnapping Tenryubito. It's easy to guess who it is combined with a few bits of intelligence and clues they've got before. Sensing that Ross is on the other side of the Den Den Mushi, Il and others must be in a very bad situation or they're already dead. The atmosphere in the top office of the government where Gorosei, 5 elder stars, is located has become depressed. All 5 were gloomy-faced. Even as the highest authority of the world government on the light side and with the power to move all the battleheads of the headquarters, they can't cross the Den Den Mushi to catch Ross out of thin air. Even if they hate Ross deeply, they can't do anything about Ross, at least for the time being. What do you want, Ghost Hand? Kidnapping Mjosgard, what are you going to do to him? Gorosei, 5 elder stars, did not coerce, but asked indifferently, one by one, because they knew that their threats would mean nothing to Ross. Ross dares to kill a Tenryubito in the Sabodi archipelago. Threats will have no effect on this existence unless they grasp Ross's true weakness. Haven't decided yet, Ross said in a plain tone. In the office of the highest level of world government, the Den Den Mushi vividly showed Ross's expression and tone, and 2 of Gorosei, 5 elder stars, instantly show anger in their eyes. As the core of the power of the world government, few people dare to speak to them in such a tone. Although the remaining 3 did not show anger, they were also pressing the fire in their hearts. One of them took a deep breath and murmured, "You can make conditions, ransoms and so on. What do you want in exchange to release Mjosgard? We can talk about it." Gorosei, 5 elder stars, are the highest authority of the world government. They are the highest in Tenryubito. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, who just spoke has the surname of Don Quixote. The full name of Mjosgard is Don Quixote Mjosgard. The Don Quixote family is considered a heterogeneous family because of Doflamingo. After being removed from Tenryubito, Mjosgard is one of the few remaining descendants of that family. Talk? When Ross heard the words of Gorosei, 5 elder stars, he said slowly, "If you withdraw the bounty order on me first, I don't mind talking to you." Impossible. Almost immediately after Ross's voice fell, a Gorosei, 5 elder stars, began to speak coldly. Another Gorosei, 5 elder stars, also spoke quietly. "Say another condition, the ransom can be opened as you like." What a joke. Ross is one of the most wicked new generation pirates that world government created by manipulating public opinion. If they suddenly withdraw his bounty order, does it mean that the government is bowing to a pirate? Not to mention a single Ross, even Yonko, 4 emperors, is out of the question. World government represents the world's most supreme authority. They would never bow to anyone. They didn't bow to the revolutionary, they didn't bow to the Whitebeard pirates, and they didn't bow to the pirate king Gold D. Roger. Naturally. Their real goal is that as long as Ross offered any terms, no matter how high the ransom, after negotiation can be falsely promised, in the delivery time, they would seize the opportunity to kill the Ghost Hand pirates. Afterward, the external news will be reported as the secret plan of the world government, and the Ghost Hand pirates will be wiped out. Being rejected by an indifference individual, Ross had expected it, and there were no unexpected expressions on his face. That, he smiled, a light, sunny smile, and said, "What else do you 5 idiots want to talk about?" Pop. This is Den Den Mushi's hanging voice, echoing in the office on the top floor of the world government. 5 iron blue faces were clearly reflected on the clean glass table. The whole room was silent. Standing in white, a Gorosei, 5 elder stars, holds his sword handle tightly with his 5 fingers. At this moment, even with their temperament and self-restraint, there are signs of a volcanic eruption. How many years it has been? Who dares to call them idiots? Even Garp, who had argued with them, Sengoku, who argued because of his will, or Steelbone, Kong, never dared to say such rude words. Perhaps Yonko, 4 emperors, would call them so, maybe the lawless big pirate would say that, but those could not get into their ears. And Ross. It was a near face-to-face joke. The Den Den Mushi showed Ross's tone and his expression in front of 5 of them perfectly and clearly. No one knows how long did it take for a Gorosei, 5 elder stars, to calm down and open his mouth indifferently. A lawless younger generation, just because of his little strength, he thinks that he can shake the world. They are the rulers. Ross is just a pirate, a crazy and a fool pirate. For them, if they don't hesitate to pay a great price, even the Yonko, 4 emperors, pirates can be annihilated. For the ghost hand pirates to survive till this day, it is their luck. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, in white whispered in a gentle tone. Let the intelligence agency and marine continue to spy on them. It's like a completely unequal gamble. The ghost hand pirates must win forever in order to survive, and they only need to win once and the ghost hand pirates will cease to exist. So the only thing they need is patience. Sky Island Burka. Ross stood on the edge of the deck of the broken government ship, after talking to the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, on the other side of Den Mushi. He hung up the Den Mushi. Lafitte, standing next to him, and Haruden, Law, and others on the coast, all heard the whole conversation clearly, but no one spoke. After Ross hung up the Den Mushi, the air sank into silence. No one knows who made the laughing noise, and as if a dam had been broken, everyone present began to laugh. Lafitte had a weird smile on his face. Law was smirked, Haruden and others yelled. No one showed any fear of Ross's provocation against the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. They are the ghost hand pirates. Everyone standing here, whether it's Lafitte or Law, or Haruden and other giants, is either a self-indulgent person or a proud fighter. Even though they are quite weak compared to the world government, and with their current strength they can't even stand in front of Yonko, 4 emperors pirates. But that's just for now. With Ross's will, in the encounter with the Admiral, in the process of killing Tenryubito, in the conflict with the Golden Lion, the annihilation of CP0's force, this will have already been implemented in the whole group of ghost hand pirates. Everyone in this group has a common attitude towards the future, that is, self-confidence and a dream that they must accomplish. Like Jinbei, who proclaimed Luffy as the pirate king in front of 4 emperors, BIGMOM. Like Zoro, who wants to be the world's strongest swordsman. Like Luffy, who wants to become king of pirates. Even if their strength is lacking currently, their will is unshakable. Whether it is Yonko, 4 emperors, or marine or world government. Whether it's survival or a life and death crisis. Looking at the grinning giants, looking at Lafitte, who had a sly smile on his face, and looking at the Trafalgar Law, whose mouth was slightly raised, Ross saw the power condensed between each of them. At this moment when Ross smiled, in his body, it seemed that something had been awakened, just like the seeds that landed, and finally, a bud was drawn. That is a breath. Similar to armament hockey and Kenbenshoku, observation, hockey, but at the same time different from the two. Half a month later. On the west side of the Sky Island Burka, there is a huge open space. Road, the giant of sand, is teaming up with the metal giant Stanson to fight against the thunder giant Haruden, but even as they teamed up, they are still defeated by Haruden's power. Haruden is the strongest of all the giants, and the Rumble fruit grants a very strong ability. Although Road and Stanson are developing their own devil fruits and becoming stronger, their growth rate and the starting line of strength are far less than Haruden's. It's hard to win against this big man. Captain really made him quite terrifying. Law, carrying the demon knife on his shoulder, sat on a raised island cloud not far away, looking at Haruden. His eyes twinkled and he murmured as the thunder flashed. Lafitte stood next to him. They seemed to have just finished their practice and were taking a break. Sand and metal attributes are good, but the power of thunder is something else entirely. Hey, we can count ourselves lucky that this fruit didn't fall into enemy hands. On the other side, Ross was walking alone in the air, applying 3 times as much gravity to himself and using Geppo, moonwalk, under 3 times as much gravity. Geppo, moonwalk, is a tricky move that consumes a lot of stamina and it doesn't cover long distances in the air. It is extremely difficult to perform this move under 3 times of gravity. Even Ross has only recently achieved 3 times the weight of Geppo, moonwalk, stability in the air. When his stamina was consumed and his forehead overflowed with sweat, Ross ended practicing and fell back to the cloud, and he dragged his tired body back to the palace and came to a large bathroom. The mist in the bathroom was hazy and vague. Ross ignored it. He took off his clothes and undressed. He went into the water and soaked his body in the pool, revealing only his head out of the water. Today's practice is over. On the other side of the pool, Robin put a white towel on her body and continued to soak in the water and asked quietly. Ross looked back and said, "No, I haven't done much exercise. I'm going to adjust it today. Robin calmly asked. So that's why you came to the women's bath? Ross glanced at Robin and asked, how are your arms? They have recovered enough for them to take something light. Robin gently brushed her hand across the water, bringing up a ripple, and said, it feels like they should be recovered in another 10 days or so. The speed of recovery is faster than what law expects. Ross lies in the water and opens his mouth. As a devil fruit user, most of his body is immersed in the water and his body is also feeling weak. Speaking of the talent system, there is a very special talent called water element affinity. Ross once asked what the talent system meant, and the talent system responded to him. That's right. This talent removes the side effect of eating a devil fruit and he would be able to swim in the sea and would no longer be rejected by the sea, that is to say, his weakness to sea will be removed. In addition, this talent also has the characteristics of underwater breathing, ignoring water pressure and so on. It requires 2 free talent points to activate it. However, his distortion fruit itself can hold up a wall of distortion and repel the seawater, so Ross has no intention of activating it unless he encounters any danger, like if he falls into the sea and has no time to use the power of distortions to exclude the seawater. Activating the talent then may save his life and give him an advantage over the enemy. After soaking for a while, Robin stood up from the pool with a white bath towel wrapped around her. This bath towel wrapped around her tightly and he couldn't see anything. Ross glanced at it and took his eyes back and moved his mind to evoke the talent system. He has not used the 110 proficiency points he got after killing the CP0 vice chief. Today, he has not exercised overly, just to adjust and use this part of the talent system. Looking at the translucent talent system interface, Ross did not hesitate and put 40 talent proficiency points into agility enhancement. Buzz. The golden light flicked away in the water pattern and the general talent panel changed. Agility enhancement. 300, top level strengthening. Physical enhancement. 500, maximum value. Spirit heart. 0, basic level strengthening. Tenacious. 100, high level strengthening. Rock. 50, mid-level strengthening. After putting 40 proficiency points into agility enhancement, it has reached proficiency of 300 points. With this improvement, even if there is still a big gap between him and Kizaru, there is basically no difference between him and the previous CP0 vice chief or Aokiji. The remaining 70 proficiency points, Ross decisively put them directly into the distortion fruit. Firearms shooting. 50 close combat fighting, 100. Distortion fruit. 600 Soru of Marines Rokushiki, 0. Kami-e, paper drawing, by Marines Rokushiki, 0. Marines Rokushiki's Geppo, moonwalk, 0. Observation hockey. 100 armament hockey. 50 with 70 proficiency points. The total proficiency of distortion fruit has reached 600 points, and finally, the branch of the distortion space has become an activatable green. At the same time, Ross also saw the conditions for activating the distortion space. 5 free talent points. Ross now has only 3 free talent points. He is 2 points away from activating space distortion ability. The first killing rewards for the 4 stages between the bounties of 100 million and 500 million have been obtained. If his luck is bad, then it would be extremely difficult for him to get 2 free talent points. However, even if he could not activate the ability of distortion space for now, Ross has finally made a big stride in his attack strikes, reaching the same extent as a Marine Admiral. Currently, his attack, speed, and physique are similar to Marine Admiral like Aokiji. The only thing he lacks is the strength of hockey. Kenbun-shoku, observation, and armament hockey need to reach 150 proficiency points to reach the level of Aokiji. Ross's eyes showed a hint of thought. Naturally, even if his 2 types of hockey is still a little behind an Admiral, but in terms of attack, speed, and physical fitness, he can barely match a Marine Admiral. If there is Lafitte or Haruden working side by side, they can basically make up for this part of the gap and achieve real confrontation. On one hand, Ross's own strength has been able to withstand an Admiral's attack and he will not be easily put down. On the other hand, Lafitte and Haruden cannot match up against the power of an Admiral. If the Admiral wants to kill his subordinates first with all his strength, that flaw will probably be caught by Ross directly and he will hit hard. In other words, a single Marine Admiral cannot deal with the Ghost Hand Pirates. Now the Ghost Hand Pirates are powerful enough to withstand an Admiral. It's almost time to take the next step. After using up the talent proficiency obtained by killing CP0 Vice Chief, Ross shut down the talent system interface and looked at the ceiling and murmured. His observation Haki sensed Robin dressing in the lounge, and Ross said to her, "Oh, by the way, call Khalifa when you go out." Robin paused but did not respond. After dressing, she left the lounge as if she hadn't heard anything at all. Ross lay in the water, feeling Robin's movements. "Oh, woman." 2 days later, Ross sent CP9's Kaku and others to New World in the second half of Grand Line at once and asked them to start collecting all the intelligence about Don Quixote family. Naturally, this Don Quixote family refers to the power of Doflamingo, not the Tenryubito group living in Holy Land Marijoy. As for the original crew such as Lafitte and the giants such as Haruden, they remained on the Sky Island practicing. In just a month, their practicing was not done at all and their mastery over Haki was somewhat weak. Ross's plan this time was to let them master at least one type of Haki. Half a month later, Robin's arms have just healed and she has not yet begun practicing. As for everyone else's improvement, Lafitte's practice for Haki is the earliest, and today he is at the top at Haki except for Ross. His observation Haki has reached a certain level and his armament Haki can now be hardened. As for Trafalgar Law, he has mastered observation Haki for now and he has been working on the armament Haki. He can use a little bit of armament Haki but he cannot harden it yet. Haruden, because of the particularity of Rumble Fruit and the fact that he is the strongest and gifted giant of all, his observation Haki is nearly as strong as Lafitte. As for armament Haki, he and Law are almost the same, it still can't be hardened. The gap between armament Haki surrounding and armament Haki hardening is very big. New World's pirate can use a little more than one type of Haki and some are experts in both types of Haki, or the female warrior of Amazon Lily can mostly use armament Haki surrounding. But only some of them could use armament Haki hardening. For the giants and Law and others, Ross's requirement for them to be at least be able to use armament Haki hardening, which is not feasible. Metal Giant's practice focus is on armament Haki. Now it's just beginning to bear fruit. He occasionally exhibits armament Haki hardening but only occasionally and he still lacks control. There's still a long way to go before he can really improve it and control it. Road is the initial master of Kenbenshoku, observation, Haki and has initial mastery of armament Haki. His Kenbenshoku, observation, is not as good as Haruden, and his armament Haki is not as good as Stanson. Bang! Bang! At this moment, on one of Burka's coasts, Ross is fighting alone against the 3 giants and 5 crew members, including Lafitte and Law. In the case of 5 people joining forces, it also caused tremendous pressure on Ross. Lafitte's strength today is not inferior to a senior vice admiral. Haruden is even slightly stronger because of his Rumble Fruit, plus the rest of the 2 giants' tenacious defense and Law's space movement is making it difficult for Ross to defeat them now. Bang! Ross punched out and smashed Stanson and Rhodes' steel sand wall while backing off at the same time and colliding with a thunderbolt coming from Haruden in the air. At this moment, Ross has already entered the state of Spirit Heart and almost has taken all aspects of his capabilities to the limit. Whiz! Lafitte's figure flickered as he appeared in front of Ross and his mahogany cane turned into a dark color, and it poked towards Ross's chest. Ross took back his fist that hit Rhodes and others and reached for the mahogany cane. Room! At this time, Law's voice came and Lafitte suddenly disappeared and when he appeared again, he came to the back of Ross and his mahogany cane continued to poke towards Ross's back. Clang! Ross's back was instantly covered with a dark layer of armament Haki and with his rock and tenacious defense, he blocked Lafitte's stab. A glimmer of light passed through his eyes, pointing at his back towards Law, a power of distortion to cut through the void, and went straight towards Law. Law's face remained unchanged and he once again used room and disappeared. Shackles of sand. Rhodes and Haruden and others seemed to communicate with each other. Suddenly, they shouted loudly. They even scattered the armor of sand for defense. The waves of sand rushed towards Ross from all over the sky. Just as Ross was about to avoid it, Law and Lafitte appeared over him, blocking him by a joint blow and he was instantly covered with yellow sand. Ross falls into the sand and opens the wall of distortion in an instant. Although the shackles of the sand wave are strong, it is not strong enough for him to be restrained of his actions. But what Haruden and others want is not to tie him down completely, it's just to create an instant opportunity. At this moment, Metal Giant folds his arms in front of him and turns them into a huge spear. He flew out in the air and stabbed the spear towards Ross. At the same time, Haruden shouted loudly and turned into a white thunderbolt. He caught up with the steel spear and poured a thunderbolt into it. Crack! Supported by the force of thunder, the steel spear seems to be transformed into a huge to horrible flying arrow, powered by the thundering current. Its speed rises sharply, enclosing the power that seems to run through everything. Elbaf, spear gun. Good cooperation. Looking at the coming attack and judging its power, Ross's eyes twinkled and he drove the power of distortion to its limit and utilized armament hockey to counter against the coming violent blow. The fist collided with the spear in air. Under the attack of power of distortion, the thundering stream is scattered like a flash of electricity. It is like a thunder being blocked by a certain force and the thunder scattered in all directions. The steel spear pierced the power of distortion bit by bit in the package of the thunderstorm, touching Ross's fistbone, but it also remained rigid in midair. Bang! A violent sound echoed as the attack eventually exploded on the coast. The terrifying aftermath made Lafitte and others take a defensive posture. When the threads of thunder dispersed, they saw Ross suspended in the midair several meters high and he slowly retrieved his fist and under his feet was a sandy beach. The power of this move is very strong. Ross took a gentle breath and nodded at Haruden and Stanson. If he hadn't upgraded the power of distortion to 600, he would probably not have been able to withstand the blow and would have suffered minor injuries. That's all for now. You can continue practicing. Ross stopped Haruden and others who seemed to want to continue to fight. His figure flickered as he flew into the distance, landing on the chest Dr. Girth. Girth and Goldberg also participated in the practice. Both of them have general talent in Kenbenshoku, observation. Their armament hockey is a little better, but not much stronger. So far, they're just in the beginning phase. Without a devil fruit, they're far less powerful than Haruden and others. Ah, Captain? Girth looked back at Haruden and others and then looked down at Ross on her chest. Because of the big difference in body shape, Ross was like someone from Dwarves' race to them. Falling on his exclusive seat, Ross looked up at Girth and said, "Don't worry, we'll find devil fruit for you and Goldberg sooner or later." Haruden and others are making steady progress, while Goldberg and she are making slow progress. It is impossible for the two of them to say that there is no urgency. Captain, Girth looked at Ross, somewhat ashamed, and said, "We haven't even done anything for you so far. Even Haruden's strength is given by you. It's totally impossible to repay your kindness." Goldberg stood by, very serious and said respectfully, "Even if our strength is still weak, but we will fight for Captain at all costs." Ross slightly smiled, not talking, but he is still thinking about what devil fruit is more appropriate besides barrier fruit, or simply leaving one person as a non-ability user to avoid an awkward situation where all others fall into the water and they have no one who could rescue them. Lying on Girth's chest for a while, Ross flew up and began to guide Girth and Goldberg on their hockey practice and then he set off to do his Geppo, moonwalk, practice. Whiz. Whiz. This time, instead of exerting gravity on himself, he used Geppo, moonwalk, and climbed higher into the sky. As the altitude rose, the clouds gradually disappeared and the air became extremely thin. It became extremely difficult to perform Geppo, moonwalk, in these conditions. In addition, breathing has become more difficult. At this altitude, a large part of the Sky Island world can be surveyed, and at a glance, he can see the structure of the Sky Island. Void. Looking at the quiet and dark void, Ross's eyes flashed brightly and he saw the moon gradually appearing from the end of his gaze. Enel yearns for the infinite earth. If he remembers correctly, there should be a special mechanical civilization on the moon, but with his current ability, he cannot fly from here to the moon. Maybe after he activated the branch of distortion space, he would be able to reach there. Whiz. As his lung functions gradually approached their limit, Ross stopped staying and flew downward, quickly returning to the ski island area and practicing in the clouds above the Sky Island. What he has to do now is to adapt to the sky-high power of distortion and to achieve full control of it, in addition to slightly improving his physical fitness. The surging power of distortion, together with the recent successive heightening of physical strength, has once again reached a state of balance. He can fully exert his powers and his body can withstand it. The first month passed. Robin's flower fruit, Hana no Mi, has reached the point where she can make doppelgangers. The second month passed. Metal Giant's armament hockey can now be hardened. Goldberg and Girth have initially completed the practicing of two-color hockey. The third month passed. Haruden can now use hardened armament hockey and his observation hockey has reached the level of Ross. During these months, Marines and the government did not send any troops to kill them on the island. Obviously, Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, did not intend to send a large number of troops to the unknown places like the Sky Island. Ross and others stayed on the Sky Island as the government does not intend to send any troops to be killed here because the basic impact does not affect the Blue Sea. But as long as Ross sets foot on the Blue Sea, they will immediately send a powerful force to encircle him. Annihilating a Yonko, 4 emperors, is too costly, but to annihilate the Ghost Hand Pirates, they don't need to be afraid. Also, over the past few months, intelligence about Don Quixote family has also been continuously transmitted to the Sky Island and handed over to Ross. Kaku and others got a lot stronger after experiencing Sky Island's training methods. The strongest two, Kaku and Jabra, are still weaker than CP0 members, but the gap between their strength is not very big. Their ability to spy on intelligence is also remarkable. However, although Kaku and others have a strong intelligence gathering ability, Don Quixote family's intelligence network and trading network are all over the world and they have insider dealings with many forces. While they were spying on intelligence, there were a few clues in front of Doflamingo, but for the time being, they could not compose effective information. Revolutionary Army, or, sitting on the throne of Dressrosa Palace, Doflamingo listened to his subordinates' reports, showing a hint of thought. Don Quixote family has dealings with many forces and it's hard to gather any information on them. Over the years, there have been countless members of various forces who have sneaked into Dressrosa, but most of them have been turned into toys by Sugar. All the secrets about the Don Quixote family are hidden in the dark underground. However, not long ago, he got an intelligence report from a special channel, that is, the Ghost Hand Pirates defeated the CP0 forces on the Sky Island, but it is still unknown what exactly happened. Marine Admiral failed to kill you. CP0 also suffered a loss. Fufu. Ghost Hand Pirates are getting more and more troublesome. Doflamingo has a hunch. The next target of the Ghost Hand Pirates is probably him. This kind of hunch is not inexplicable, but an undetermined conclusion that is vaguely obtained through the news of Trafalgar Law and a series of intelligence analyses. And one thing is certain, Trafalgar Law is never going to be able to stay with the Ghost Hand Pirates while forgetting about his past. If you want to deal with me, then come. Doflamingo stood up with a wicked smile on his face and said, if you really want to come at me, then it's time to get ready. The government and Marines have already hated you guys for a long time. Fufu. No matter whether it's about law or the accident with the sand fruit, he will not easily let the Ghost Hand Pirates go. If the other party dares to come to kill him, then all the more better. As the original Tenryubito and with his identity of Shichibukai, only 4 emperors can make him fear anything in this sea. The Ghost Hand Pirates are not qualified. Great age of pirates at the beginning of 16 years. The Ghost Hand Pirates sailed from the Sky Island Burka and quietly returned to the Blue Sea. Although the process of returning was silent, the purpose of this time is no longer to simply survive, but to completely turn the world upside down. Once we show up, or expose the intelligence about our location, we will be immediately targeted by the government, so before that, we must prepare the intelligence and the plan to avoid temporary changes. The ship sailed slowly on the sea and sailed towards an island, not far from Dressrosa. Relying on the 3 arrows of the high-level log pose and some maps of the New World, Ross and others determined where they were when they returned to the Blue Sea, with 2 islands separated them from Dressrosa and the final buffer zone. Once they step into Dressrosa, all hell will break loose. Our advantage is that with the 3 arrows of the log pose, the government and Marines would not know that our goal is Doflamingo, nor can they determine which island we are going to arrive next. We can use this to respond to their plans. Law, carrying the demon knife, stood beside the table where the sea map was spread and opened his mouth in silence. Robin looked thoughtful and said, you're right, but we can't ignore the possibility that the government and Marines guessed our purpose, and Doflamingo, as the core of the dark trading network, won't be surprised at our attack. Lafitte smiled weirdly and said, the Tenryubito on our ship can attract the attention of the government and Marines. If we designed this perfectly enough, it will be like a powerful battle force. Ross stared at the sea map and looked at it. After considering it for a while, he said, with our current situation, once we show up, we are going to attract attention and the government's, Marine, and Doflamingo's intelligence agencies will focus on us. As long as we reveal a little more information about the route, some people can infer our purpose. So be as concealed as possible. At least we cannot be exposed before reaching the second island and the Tenryubito may come in handy. We have to design this carefully. Do you have a plan? Ross asked Lafitte. Lafitte smiled. I have a plan. Ross nodded and without asking for any detailed inquiry, went on. This time the aim is to destroy Doflamingo, but besides that, we also have to hit the government hard. Speaking of this, Ross's eyes glimmered with cold light. When Robin looked at Ross, she couldn't help but raise her lips and gently smile. She said, "It seems that Captain has plans." Ross, Robin, Law, and Lafitte, all four are cool and able to develop a plan for the battle. Under the discussion, all aspects of the government, Marines, and Doflamingo are completely spread out. Perhaps, in terms of strategy and intelligence quotient alone, the people present are not as good as Marine Vice Admiral Great Staff Officer Suru or Akagami Pirates Vice Captain Beckman, but together, they can take many details into account. The first island appeared on the horizon during the detailed arrangement and discussion. The giants are too big, it would be best if they do not go to the next island. Although no one knows they are our fighting force yet, we should try our best to cover them up and avoid any accidents. I think so too. Ross nodded, everything is for the sake of security. The Ghost Hand Pirates are not the Straw Hat Pirates. Their captain does not have the Marine Hero as his grandfather. He does not have Dark King Rayleigh as his master. He did not gain his dream to become a pirate from Akagami, Red Hair. He does not have Revolutionary Army leader as his father. They will be ruthlessly chased by the Marine and the government to kill them. Soon, Ross, Lafitte, and others landed on the first island, avoiding exposure as much as possible, and purchased ingredients and items they needed. Nevertheless, the government and Marine, together with Don Quixote family, have built an intelligence network that is terrifyingly, even though the Ghost Hand Pirates have not shown their bodies and faces and they are concealed under Ross's ability. Only when they buy food materials, can they show the shadow of a black cloak, which still becomes put the traces on them by the government and Marine. Naturally. Because there are too many such traces, and most of them are meaningless false intelligence or coincidences, it will be several days before Marine and the government use exclusion method to find the traces before ruling them out by investigation before seizing them. Not long after Marine got intelligence, Doflamingo also got information about Ross from Marine through his channels. However, Doflamingo frowned at the fact that this might be the Ghost Hand Pirates and he only has intelligence on them appearing on that island. The second intelligence about the Ghost Hand Pirates finally appeared 10 days later. When this intelligence appeared, and then the first intelligence before it appeared in series, the government and Marine finally got a little valuable information. Marine Headquarters. In one of the conference rooms, Headquarters Vice Admiral sat on the sides. One of the Headquarters Vice Admiral pointed to the sea map and said, "There will be 3 islands on this route, but it's hard to guess which one they're aiming at." Others, including Doberman sitting in the corner, were also mumbling. And just as everyone was talking, a gentle and clear voice came, "If you judge by probability, then the greatest possibility is Dressrosa." In the direction of the voice, sitting in a plain-clothed Vice Admiral, everyone saw her moment, showing a tribute. Headquarters Vice Admiral and Chief of Staff, Crane. These 3 routes, except Dressrosa, point to the Universal Sea and the Beast Sea unless they want to compete for the status of 4 emperors right now. Naturally, it's not impossible. The Ghost Hand Pirates once killed a main member of the Beast Pirates on the Icefield Island. With Kaido's character, if Ross appears on that route, he will not let his go. Crane's hair is nearly a half gray, but her tone is very calm, she said, bit by bit linking all the bits of intelligence to form a clear context. She also mentioned Yonko, 4 emperors, mentioning the characteristics of the Ghost Hand Pirates, mentioning the character of Ross, mentioning Trafalgar Law. At last, she took a sip of tea from her cup to moisturize her dry throat. She added, "At present, there are too few effective bits of intelligence, only so many can be analyzed, the possibility is about half. About half the possibilities that they will go to Dressrosa and the other half is that they will go to one of the areas controlled by Yonko, 4 emperors. This possibility is somewhat of a tangled number. An admiral is required to deal with the Ghost Hand Pirates and with half the possibility, how should they mobilize? The people present did not have the power to decide. Half the possibility, Fleet Admiral Sengoku sat in the main position. Now Akainu and Aokiji are not in the headquarters, only Kizaru is here and in order to deal with all kinds of things, headquarters must keep at least 1 admiral here. If Kizaru is dispatched, in case of any unexpected situation, it will be difficult to deal with the problem of manpower, and Garp will be expected to take care of something. He still wants to be Marine Fleet Admiral for a few more years, so he can't let that happen. On the other side, in the palace of Dressrosa, Doflamingo also got the intelligence, but he reached a different judgment from the Crane. He is almost certain that the Ghost Hand Pirates are coming to Dressrosa. There is no such thing as detailed inference and reasoning, but only his intuition. Marines need to deal with various issues rationally, but for a pirate, they often deal with things with their intuition, and even Doflamingo is no exception to that. It seems that you are really coming to me, foo. Doflamingo doesn't look down on the Ghost Hand pirates. The Ghost Hand pirates escaped from Marine admirals and killed the Tenryubito, which is enough to threaten him. So he will not only pay attention to it, but he will also concentrate all his attention on it to deal with the upcoming battle, which will probably be the most intense battle since he occupied Dressrosa. After thinking for a moment, Doflamingo took out a Den Mushi and contacted the world government. As a former Tenryubito and the creator of the world's largest trading corps in the dark underground, he is the most special of all Shichibukai, with influence spreading throughout the criminal organization, marine, and even within the government. The guy you want to annihilate the most is coming to me now, foo. Don't know what you plan to do. 5 days later, the Ghost Hand pirates landed on the last island before Dressrosa and began to map out the island. They were indirectly exposed here. When the news was delivered to the Marine headquarters, Crane and Sengoku and others almost immediately confirmed that Ross's target route is the site of 7 warlords of the Sea Doflamingo's country, Dressrosa. Despite the fact that it was a little late, Sengoku immediately ordered the battleships to depart and led by Marine Admiral Kazaru, 3 large battleships heading for Dressrosa. On the other side, on Dressrosa's side, Doflamingo has also recalled all of his cadres from outside the country. The people still don't know what happened, but the various forces on the sea have gradually captured a feeling like this is only the eve of the storm. Don Quixote family, the core of the dark world, has a trading network all over the world. Once something goes wrong, it will immediately affect the whole world. And just as countless forces in the world looked at Dressrosa with uncertainties and surprises, Ross and his party finally arrived. Here it is, Dressrosa. Looking ahead at the island, Law took a deep breath and recalled the scene of Doflamingo killing Corazon. He could not help but squeeze the demon knife in his hand and again look at the island with cold eyes. He knows that his current strength is not enough to kill Doflamingo, but he has his participation and planning in a series of plans against Doflamingo. In order to avenge Corazon and kill Doflamingo, he has done almost everything he can now. In this war, Doflamingo is bound to pay for what he did that year. Lafitte stood on one side of the deck, leaning his body and carrying a mahogany cane, saying, "I think Doflamingo may already know that we are here, hee. Let's go." Ross looked calm and opened his mouth as the ship gradually landed and jumped to the shore. He was wearing a black windbreaker without any cover, so he stepped into Dressrosa. All the arrangements have been completed. Now there is no need to cover up. All that is left is the decisive battle. For him, Doflamingo is a prey who will give him at least some talent proficiency point, and if he can give him a free talent point, that would be great. Lafitte gently smiles and follows Ross. Robin and Law are also behind, and a group of 4 people march toward Dressrosa. They cross the street, heading towards the palace in the middle of Dressrosa. They are coming. How daring, coming here without any cover, foo. In the central palace of Dressrosa, Doflamingo stood at the window with a strange smile on his face, as if he had everything in the palm of his hand. He turned and walked out of the front door of the palace, pointing to the dark figure and saying, "Now that the guests have arrived, it's time to go out and greet them." The 4 top cadres of the Don Quixote family gathered together. Even Virgo, who was undercover in the Marine, arrived in Dressrosa a few days before the formal order was given to the Marine. Naturally, Virgo won't show up. He'll lead Marine and act on behalf of Marine against the Ghost Hand pirates because everything is a decision of the upper class and it won't expose or arouse suspicion. When Ross and other 4 people came outside the palace of Dressrosa, headed by Doflamingo, the top 3 cadres except for Virgo also stepped out. Both sides are a group of 4. Ghost Hand pirates, after all, I met you. If I remember correctly, did you take something from me that you shouldn't take? Doflamingo looked at Ross and others, with a weird curve rising from the corners of his mouth. Ross is wearing a black trench coat and Lafitte and others are standing behind him wearing dark clothes, which were especially changed in the previous island. Do you mean Logia's sand fruit? He looked up at Doflamingo. Doflamingo was taller than Ross, but he couldn't take advantage of his height to gain momentum over Ross. Doflamingo stunned before he smiled and said, "I thought after you grabbed something from me, you will forget who it originally belonged to." "No," Ross's gaze calmly said, "if you don't have the ability to guard it then it's not yours. This is the way the world is. The emergence of civilization and wisdom just makes the jungle develop in a more unique direction. The essence has not changed. The strong will live and the weak will die. This is the way that the world works. Doflamingo smiled a little, but immediately he laughed a little more. Instead of responding, he turned to Trafalgar Law behind Ross and said, "Law, the little devil is finally back. The seat of the third-generation member of the Don Quixote Pirates has been reserved for you, foo-foo-foo-foo." Doflamingo doesn't want to kill Law. Surgeon Fruit is so powerful that if he's willing to obey him, in some ways it's worth even more than Hobie no Mi, which is eaten by sugar. Hearing Doflamingo's words, Law raised his calm face sharply and said calmly to Doflamingo, "From the moment Mr. Corazon died, the meaning of my existence is to revenge Mr. Corazon. You should go to hell to repent, Doflamingo." Foo-foo-foo-foo. Doflamingo listened to Law, not showing any anger, but laughed and said, "Should I say you were brave or foolish, Law, I'm sorry to tell you that today your opponent is not me." As Doflamingo's voice fell, 6 people with different heights, all wearing a white trench coat and wearing a mask, slowly walked out from the dark. The white hue contrasted sharply with the dark tones of Ross's group. The highest level of the World Government Intelligence Organization, CP0. Although not afraid of the Ghost Hand Pirates, but there are easier ways to clean up the Ghost Hand Pirates, Doflamingo naturally will not brainlessly lead his subordinates to a bloody battle against Ross. It is undoubtedly the best way to use the power of the government. CP0. Trafalgar Law looked at the 6 people who came over. There is no doubt that these 6 people are members of the World Governance Subordinate Organization CP0, and the chief of CP0 is probably one of them. Ghost Hand Pirates, hand over St. Nosgard and you will be shown a little mercy. Walking in the forefront is a thin, tall, high-masked man. His voice is as cold as the winter wind as he said one sentence to Ross and other people. He is the CP0's chief. Whether it is the Order of the Annihilation, the Ghost Hand Pirates issued by Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, or the protection of Tenryubito's vocation and mission, the Ghost Hand Pirates are ranked first in their annihilation list. Knowing that the Ghost Hand Pirates are going to find their own trouble, Doflamingo naturally can't do nothing. Knowing that the government hates Ghost Hand Ross, he naturally immediately contacted Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and CP0, and Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, showed almost no hesitation and they sent the CP0 chief directly. Marine as a force on the bright side attracts great attention with their every move, but the CP0 is hidden in the dark is different. Its actions are completely secret, not known to the outside world. As Captain expected, Lafitte looked at the 6 CP0 members who were present, smiled softly with a crooked head and said, "I don't know which one is chief and which one is the division captain." The 6 people of CP0 are all indifferent and no one spoke. They just stand there and it formed a palpitating momentum so that the atmosphere in the field is extremely heavy. Ross stood there quietly, looking at the strongest person with his observation hockey's perception. There was no fear in his eyes, but only calmness. "It's almost time." "What time?" The eyebrows under one of the CP0 masks are slightly wrinkled and there is a vague feeling that the coming event will not be very good. Nearly the next moment, a Den Mushi's voice suddenly sounded from one of them. The man's face under his mask was a little ugly. He took out the Den Mushi and answered, Hurry up and save me, you bastards. Hurry up. Those pirates tied bombs on me. It's timed." On the other side of Den Mushi came Nosgard's voice of crying and scolding, calling out for help while scolding the CP0 members. He was apparently scared and he wet his pants. The sound spread and the scene suddenly became strange. The originally suppressed atmosphere was instantly destroyed. Although all 6 CP0 people wear masks, Ross and Doflamingo can almost guess how ugly the face under the mask is becoming right now. Doflamingo's eyebrows twisted together as he didn't expect Ross to prepare for this situation beforehand, and since it came out, the Tenryubito bound by a time bomb must not be here, and the crying voice on the Den Mushi confirmed his judgment. Ross looked at the 6 CP0 members and said, "I think you have already understood the specific situation. After 12 hours, the bomb will explode. As for where he is, you all know. If you start now, as long as you don't encounter too bad weather, you should arrive just in time." The CP0 chief stared at Ross and finally spit out a word, "Well played." For CP0, their duty, or the most important mission, is to protect the security of Tenryubito. No matter the case or situation, the safety of Tenryubito should be put in the first place. The meaning of their existence as being the hardest shield of Tenryubito. Number 3, Number 4, you two stay here, others come with me. CP0 Chief didn't know what plans Ross had laid out on another island, but the Tenryubito was still alive. He couldn't delay anymore and made a quick decision, leaving 2 division captain behind and taking the other 3 with him. They must arrive on the island as soon as possible, then they have to find the Tenryubito on the island and save him. As for leaving 2 people behind, it is also necessary to do. These 2 are division captain, and with their and Don Quixote family combat powers, there should not be too much problem. When they come back, or when the Marines arrives, the situation will be back in their control again. Marines' battleships are already on the way and it shouldn't be long before they arrive here. Whiz. Whiz. After the order was issued, the 4 CP0 members immediately disappeared, leaving only the 3rd and 4th in their original place. The eyes of the 2 men were gloomy, with a little anger in them. No one has ever dared to threaten a Tenryubito, forcing their CP0 into such a passive, must-do situation. Seeing the departure of the 4 CP0 members, Ross looked calmly in front of him without any waves of surprise in his heart. It seems that he had already foreseen this scene. He turned his head and looked at Doflamingo and said slowly, "The obstacles are almost over. Next, it's time to clear up the grievances between you and my crew, Don Quixote Doflamingo." Doflamingo stared at Ross and suddenly he laughed again and said, "The means to remove the main force of CP0 was good, but it doesn't seem to change anything. Marines will be here in at most half a day, and only depending on the 4 of you, what can you do in half a day?" He opened his hands and his face showed an unruly smile. As Doflamingo's voice dropped, Diamante, Trebol, and Pica, the 3 top cadres of Don Quixote pirates, slowly stepped forward and stood in line with him. At the same time, a large number of Don Quixote family members rushed to the square in front of the palace, divided into spades, plum blossoms, hearts, and diamonds. The bomber Gladius, Macvis, Lao-Ji, Don Quixote family's cadres are almost all gathered here. Everyone is a famous strong man on the sea. If it wasn't for no bounty for Shichibukai's subordinates' rule, then every one of the cadres would at least have a bounty of more than 200 million berries. Even though CP0 has withdrawn its main force such as CP0 Chief for the sake of Tenryubito, the 2 remaining are division captains, and with them are the main members of the Don Quixote pirates, and they bring extremely strong oppression to their opponent. Now, in some buildings not far from the palace, many civilians have seen this scene. All of them look at this side, with a shocked look on their faces. For they have never seen the Don Quixote family's cadres and members converging in such a dense manner. His Majesty, and Sir Diamante, incredibly, are all Don Quixote family cadres here? Is a battle about to start here? Look at those people in the middle, they seem to be the Ghost Hand pirates. After the people of Dressrosa recognized Ross, all of them were surprised and stunned. Looking at this, it seems that the Ghost Hand pirates are going to fight the Don Quixote family. Those people who have not been turned into toys are naturally worried, but when they see Don Quixote family's huge force and the presence of top cadres such as Diamante, their worries ease a little. But, unlike the light side, all those who have been turned into toys are looking in the direction of the square, and they are all shocked, and there are totally different emotions in their hearts. Sugar's devil fruit can turn a person into a toy and erase their existence from everyone's mind. Every day, they have to do day-to-day work for the Don Quixote family. Their family can't recognize them and they are forgotten by everyone. What they want most is that Doflamingo can be knocked down so that they can recover their bodies and expose the darkness. Now, the emergence of the Ghost Hand pirates seems to give this desire a glimmer of light. Go and report this to the soldier captain, something big has happened. Can you win? Ghost Hand pirates, compared with the ordinary people who were kept in the dark, the toys, after getting the news, acted secretly. For a time, the entire Dressrosa surged. You are wrong, Doflamingo. Standing behind Ross, Law slowly pulled out the demon knife and glanced coldly. We're not just 4 people, and half of the day is more than enough to kill you. Don Quixote family is not strong. Doflamingo himself is not that strong either. The important thing is that Doflamingo knows the secrets and have various secret cards. Once he is touched, it will lead to Marine and even the government coming after that person. So once you plan to deal with Doflamingo, you have to kill him with one blow. When he heard Law, the smile on Doflamingo's face finally turned into a sneer. He drew his 5 fingers across and suddenly made a sharp stroke towards Law. Pretty arrogant, Law, you little devil, go Chiquito, 5 color strings. Ching! Ross pulled his sword out of its sheath and Happy Spring's crossblade blocked the 5 wires that can cut steel easily. His eyes were calm. Even in the face of Don Quixote family's huge power network and the encirclement of 2 CP0 Division Captain, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Doflamingo grinned as he saw Ross blocking his attack on Law. His smile was wicked and filled with arrogance. Law, this little devil ran away from Don Quixote family after stealing something valuable. Now I have to discipline my subordinates and it's not your turn to intervene. At the moment when his voice fell, Doflamingo's 5 fingers jerked, and countless wires converge, turning into a terrifying whip, slamming toward Ross. Overheat. Excess whip string. Ross holds the Happy Spring in an expressionless grip and surrounds the blade in the power of distortion and wields the sword against that very thick whip. Under the agitation of the power of distortion, he cuts it rigidly. Law, I thought you were planning to fight me. Ross stared at Doflamingo and said those words in a gentle tone. The moment his voice fell, his whole body flashed toward Doflamingo. Start. Almost at the moment Ross moved, Robin, Law, and Lafitte all reacted. Robin raised her hands falsely and instantly produced countless arms, killing nearly 100 ordinary soldiers of Don Quixote family. Then Law opened the room and instantly switched his position. He swung his sword and cut dozens of Don Quixote family members into 2 segments. Then Lafitte shot into the crowd like a black shadow and enemies began to fall like dominoes falling to the ground as blood spattered. So arrogant, Diamante came to Lafitte with a long sword and a cold face. He swung it out and collided with the stick in Lafitte's hand. All of a sudden, sparks splashed. Immediately afterward, the rest of the cadres and ordinary members also flocked towards Law and Robin. They thought that they will quickly defeat Robin and others with absolute numbers and strength. Simultaneously, 2 CP0 division captains also charged toward Ross, planning to launch a raid on Ross's back and ready to assist Doflamingo to quickly defeat Ross. But almost as the whole square flashed and countless Don Quixote family people flocked up, a thunderbolt suddenly fell from the sky. Boom! Like a waterfall, the thundering flow descended from the sky. The first to land was a white thunder condensed battle axe. When the earth fell, a burst of thunder and lightning broke out. All the hundreds of Don Quixote family soldiers in all directions were electrified. And almost in the next moment, in the thunderlight, countless thunderbolts converged and turned into a giant that was raising the thunder axe that swept towards Don Quixote family. Crack! The thick thunder was like a stream of water, and as the axe swept out, almost hundreds of ordinary soldiers in front were wrapped in lightning strikes. Even the cadres of the Don Quixote family were caught off guard and were hit by the thunderbolt. Even if they used armament hockey to resist the attack, it still left a scorch mark. Thunder! Doflamingo saw the scene from afar, and his eyebrows twisted. The 2 division captain also blinked a bit, but they did not pay any attention to it. Instead, the 2 division captain joined hands and continued to rush towards Ross. Sword of Distortion. Ross was fearless. With a wave of his sword, a power of distortion flicked out and turned into a half-moon arc. At the same time, he chopped that arc toward 3 people, the 2 division captain, and Doflamingo. CP0 division captain's strength is slightly weaker than Doflamingo's, and even with Doflamingo's awakening of devil fruit strength still lags far behind current Ross. Bang! 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 Under Ross's blow, the division captain and Doflamingo teamed up to deal with it, but they still couldn't face the attack and they had to retreat. And just when Ross was facing 3 enemies, the battlefield in the distance changed again. No one knows from where, but a silver light came to the battlefield. It was like a stream of water, but it was very heavy. It gathered in the scene and turned into a giant cast in iron and steel. The giant held the giant sword in both hands and slammed it. Bang! Under the absolute power, even if there are no sword art skills, the sword still opened the square, sending dozens of Don Quixote family members flying out and attacking the highest cadre Diamante in a magnificent manner. Diamante's face changed and his hands cleaved violently with his sword. Hanjetsu glaive, half-moon glaive. Bang! The eruption of green sword energy forced Metal Giant's sword to be contained. But when the sword energy invaded Stanson's face, it was very small, leaving no trace on his body surface. When the 2 giants appeared, they completely stirred the entire battlefield and turned the momentum of the fight to them. The shocking momentum was transmitted in all directions, shaking the entire Dressrosa. The giants? With devil fruit powers, Pika's sharp voice sounded. Watching the members of the Don Quixote family have no resistance in front of the 2 giants, he could not help but express his anger. All of a sudden, he sank into the earth and mobilized his devil fruit. In the surge of the earth, a stone giant stood up, as high as hundreds of meters high, even bigger than Haruden and Stanson. Go to hell. Giants. Pika controls the huge stone man's fist and punches sharply at Haruden, but Pika's speed to Haruden, who is a thunder giant and proficient in observation hockey, is slower than ants crawl. He did not even deliberately to pay attention until the fist is closed and his entire figure disappeared in lightning. Pika found that Haruden was outrageously fast and he couldn't even catch his figure with his observation hockey, and he couldn't help but frown. He turned his head to stare at the metal giant and punched again. But, just then, a handful of yellow sand suddenly surged up from the earth and turned into a huge sand fist that flung against Pika's fist. Bang! The sand fist collided against the stone fist and a massive sound was heard. The square land collapsed in an instant. Countless members of the Don Quixote family flew out in the aftermath, and their faces were full of horror. This level of power is no longer something that ordinary members like them can intervene. Even Gladius and other cadres are gloomy at the moment, as none of them expected the Ghost Hand Pirates to have such a strong fighting force. The giants are very strong. After eating a devil fruit, especially a Logia's devil fruit, every single one of the giants is like a huge and almost invincible army. Sand fruit. Pika looked at the huge sand fist blocking him, and his eyes showed anger. This fruit originally belonged to the Don Quixote family and was stolen halfway by the Ghost Hand Pirates. Don Quixote top cadre Pika, your opponent is me. The giant of the sand road appeared. Instead of making armor of sand, he reached for Pika's huge stone man's leg. Wither. The ability of sand fruit was launched. The giant stone man's leg instantly desertified and scattered. The stone giant, who had lost one leg, could not keep its figure and fell to the left. Even though Pika tried to control it, it only moved a little bit and eventually, it collapsed on a part of Dressrosa's palace. Bastard! Pika's angry and shrill voice rang out. Rode opened his mouth and laughed. He had known Don Quixote family's distribution of forces from Ross long ago. The plan was very clear. It was him who will deal with Pika. Although the rock devil fruit is also very powerful, in the face of Logia's sand fruit, he can easily turn the huge rock into crushed sand that can be controlled by him. The three giants appeared, and the battle situation turned on its head. Doflamingo watched as his subordinates fight with the three giants, and he could not help but frown as he watched the scene of serious death and injury. He looked coldly at him and said, "I have underestimated you a little, Ghost Hand Ross." The Ghost Hand Pirates who were hunted like dogs are now showing a power that is unpredictable. Metal Giant and Sand Giant are all right. Pika is at a great disadvantage and Diamante can hardly stop the destruction of the Metal Giant, but they can still make restraint and confrontation. The Thunder Giant alone is more terrifying than both of them. Almost no one can stop him, and even the cadres of the Don Quixote family cannot resist the power of the thunder. He must make a quick decision. Doflamingo took a deep breath and there was a shimmer in his dark glasses. His figure flashed as he charges into Ross and kicked in the air. Athlete, leg shave string, Shigen, finger gun, fury. Rankiaku, tempest kick, triumphant bird. At the same time, the two division captains also attacked. Both of them are strong body expert. The vast majority of the people in the CP0 are strong body experts. Faced with the joint attack of the three people, Ross showed incredible speed as his body abruptly retreated, and as he got out of the three-man's attack range he counterattacked with a backhand sweep with his sword, and a violent power of distortion shot out in front. Buzz. The air in front of Ross showed a strange distortion. The faces of Doflamingo and the other two people changed, and they utilized their armament hockey to resist Ross's attack. Even so, under Ross's attack, the three were still shocked back. Compared to the previous battle with CP0 Vice Chief, Ross's attack strength has truly reached the level of a Marine Admiral. The power of this guy, Doflamingo's face became extremely gloomy. In this brief encounter, he had already judged that Ross's strength is extraordinary and he is almost above him in speed and attack. And more importantly, the Ito no Mi, string fruit, showed very little restraint in front of the distortion fruit. The original sharp string lost its sharpness under the power of distortion. Whiz. Ross's eyes were as tranquil as water, and he didn't plan to give Doflamingo a chance to think about countermeasures. His figure suddenly flickered as he came in front of Doflamingo. Currently, he is able to control the power of distortion to a near subtle degree. He can attack in wide range pattern, and he can also condense it into a line or even shrink to a point. Not good. Doflamingo, aware of the power of Ross's attack, raised his hand without hesitation. Kumo number Sugaki, spider's web. The innumerable silk threads interweave into a large web in his arms, and the part of web his arms touched condense into a dark layer of armament haki. But even so, the whole spiderweb wall showed a weird distortion the moment Ross's sword touched it, and like an ordinary spiderweb covering a bird, the spiderweb wall completely collapsed under an unequal force. See. At the moment when the spiderweb wall was broken, Doflamingo avoided the attack while going sideways. The distortion strike fell on the ground and instantly cut the ground into a crack of hundreds of meters long. The two division captains saw Doflamingo in distress and immediately offered support. They attacked Ross from left and right. Ross's face remained unchanged as he slightly raised his left and right arm, and his elbows slammed toward both sides. Bang! The two different powers of distortions erupted on both sides, and the air turned into a whirlpool-like distortion and hit the two CP0 division captains and caused them to fly backward. Doflamingo sank low and crossed his hands and slammed them towards Ross. Two extremely thick super twisting whips hit Ross, but the happy spring in Ross's hands swept them away. See. The two super twisting whips that were enough to cut a town in half were cut in two parts under Ross's sword. The two whips fell to the ground and disappeared. Ross held his sword in both hands and slashed it at Doflamingo. Instead of concentrating the power of distortion into a single line, Ross hit the entire front area of him. Kumo number Sugaki, spider's web. Doflamingo spread his hands and cast multiple spiderwebs wall. Buzz. When the power of distortion falls, the multi-interwoven cobweb wall presents an appalling depression as if it was withstanding a tremendous impact and it reached its limit in half a second. Under the terrible distortion depression, the cobweb threads broke off one by one, and eventually collapsed completely, and Doflamingo dropped from the sky and smashed into the palace. Ross ignored the two division captains and directly charged into the palace. Killing the division captains will give him nothing, as he has already collected the reward for killing one on the Sky Island. Today, his only target is Don Quixote family, and the only prey he cares about is Doflamingo. Crumbling earth. Ross, who fell above the palace, did not rush into the broken palace, but raised his foot and poured the power of distortion into the palace. The next moment, in front of the astounding eyes of countless Don Quixote family members and the civilians of Dressrosa, the huge Dressrosa palace appears as if a pair of invisible hands pinching the upper and lower ends of it and then turning them in different directions. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the palace, which is more than 100 meters high, became broken ruins under the power of distortion. A shocking scene presented itself in front of everyone. Damn! Inside the palace, Doflamingo with armament haki covering his arms holds the walls on both sides to resist the invading power of distortion. Although he was able to resist Ross' powers with the help of the two division captains, Doflamingo realized clearly that even with the help of two CP0 division captains, he could no longer hide his strength, otherwise he would not be able to fight Ross at all. Bang! Bang! Ross's two strikes repelled the two division captains, and he charges into the ruins of the palace that had turned into a spiral like a twist. And almost at the moment before he rushed to the ruins, a strange force suddenly shrouded the entire ruins, and the ruins began to turn into white silk, which eventually spread from bottom to the top. String fruit, awakening. Did he finally use it? Ross looked at the ruins of the palace, which had turned into countless white silk threads. Since the awakening of his distortion fruit, Ross has been exerting the power of awakening, and now he has a real attack force comparable to a marine admiral. Doflamingo's strengths in all aspects are inferior to a marine admiral. Only by using fruit awakening can he be qualified to fight against an admiral, but he is only qualified to fight against them and not win. If he doesn't use his fruit awakening, then he doesn't even have that qualification. Doflamingo is inside the palace. His face is morphed into a very depressed expression, as he did not want to expose his fruit awakening ability. After all, the awakening of the string devil fruit is his ace in whole. By utilizing his ace card, his strength or defense will surge to a terrible point, and he doesn't want anyone to know about it. But faced with the strong and outrageous power that Ross displayed, he had to expose his power if he wishes to live. Ever white. Since it has already been exposed, Doflamingo, who has a strong temperament, will naturally not be immersed in depression, but will use all of his powers, killing Ross here. Under his control, Some of the ruins of the palace turned into countless white strings which tangled toward Ross in an instant, and the endless white strings seemed to have turned into waves as they surged madly towards their target. For him to be pushed this far, Diamante, who is fighting Metal Giant, and other top cadres of the family such as Pika, who is fighting the Sand Giant, are all looking at this scene with flashing eyes. They are the only top cadres who know that Doflamingo has the power of awakening. Nobody expected Ross to be so powerful that Doflamingo had to use his Devil Fruit's awakening power. Ghost Hand Ross is really not a guy to be taken lightly, but since Daffy used his Devil Fruit awakening, it should be enough to reverse the situation. Trable, who is protecting a special person Sugar in the underground port, looks at the image projected by the Den Den Mushi and can't help but sneeze. Sugar on the side was carrying a basket of grapes, and she was also looking at the projected picture. She ate and whispered to Trable while she was eating. "You're too wicked, you should go die." "I won't die, I won't listen to a stupid brat like you. Hey hey hey." Although there have been many accidents, but the situation is still under control. Trable looks at the picture projected on the projection. Neither Trable nor Sugar was aware that a figure wearing a high ceremonial hat was hiding in the darkness tens of meters away from them. Hoo. Distortion cut. Faced with the incoming white strings, Ross gripped the handle of his sword with his 5 fingers and poured the power of distortion and converged it on the handle, splitting the coming strings with a fierce sword wave. See. The power of distortion splits the white string from the center into 2 halves, and sword attack runs all the way through the earth, cutting a crack hundreds of meters in length. The first half of the white silk line stopped and collapsed in the air, but it was again condensed in the next moment and attacked Ross. For the string fruit, awakening means qualitative change. Currently, Doflamingo's attacking powers are still inferior to Ross, but the gap is not very large, although his body is weaker than Ross, but in terms of hockey, Doflamingo is above Ross. In front of the existence of this level, there are few people who are good at all aspects. Most of them are outstanding in 1 or 2 fields, such as speed, physique, attack and so on. Is it faster or stronger? No one can master everything. Looking at the white string wave, Ross blinked and put the happy spring into its scabbard. He swooped down and waved his fist into the white string wave. Bang! 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 As if a group of magic dances, silk threads continue to explode and converge. Inside the ruins of Palace, which is being affected by the string Devil Fruit, there are successive bursts of depressed sounds echoing from there, like a bee flying into the closed flower bones, constantly bumping back and forth. The 2 CP0 division captains saw this scene and they both stood still. About half a minute later, the consecutive sounds stopped and the white waves burst apart. Doflamingo's figure flew upside down from the white line and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Whiz! Ross's figure also rushed out of the palace ruins as he continues to attack Doflamingo without giving him any chance to breathe. Before reaching Doflamingo, he punched directly. Doflamingo releases the spider's web and he was successful in removing some part of the power of distortion before it hit him, causing him to break into a building. After smashing into the building, he used his powers to turn the building into strings and continues to attack Ross. Not far away, the 2 CP0 division captains saw Doflamingo use a special force, but he was still not Ross's opponent. They couldn't help but look at each other and rush up again. At this moment, the news that Dressrosa was in chaos and completely reduced to battlefield had already been transmitted to Marine headquarters, and Sengoku rubbed his eyebrows with some headache as he listened to the report on the battlefield over there. If he had been decisive at that time and sent Marine Admiral directly in advance, he would not have caused this kind of trouble, but even now, with 2 CP0 division captain, there should be no major problems. As long as Kizaru catches up, the situation can be put under control again. For him, although Doflamingo is also a garbage in the sea, he is one of the 7 warlords of the sea that signed the agreement with the government. He could not be defeated by Ross. Although they are all pirates, Doflamingo's existence, however dark, at least balance the sea, while Ross has made the sea a mess, making the government and Marine lose face countless times. They can never let Ross continue to sail anyway. Off-white, shield white string. Doflamingo waved his hands and the earth surged like a wave, blocking Ross's fists coming towards him. Bang! The fist fell and the line of distortion collapsed. Doflamingo folded his arms in front of him and displayed armament hockey to resisting the aftermath of the power of distortion, then picks his finger and the string behind Ross slammed toward him. Originally, a string Devic fruit user is good at air warfare, but in front of Ross, air warfare is obviously a foolish tactic. Doflamingo abandoned air warfare completely when he realized that Ross was faster in the air than he was, and turned to ground warfare with the power of awakening. Tekai, Iron Body, Punch. The fist of the division captain slammed toward Ross. The powerful force behind the punch made a wind pressure and turned it into a huge fist, which went to the back of Ross. Ross waved off Doflamingo's string attack and then shoved it out before turning around and breaking the division captain's long-range punch, and then he turned back and continued to attack Doflamingo. Now only one CP0 division captain is left against him, because when Doflamingo's abilities awakened, the gap between their strength became very small, and the two of them are basically wasting their fighting power, so the other one begins to deal with the other Ghost Hand pirate members. After he used his Devil Fruit awakening powers, Doflamingo was only slightly weaker than Ross and had a division captain with him. The battle was stagnant for a time. On the other side, with Don Quixote family's many cadres and top cadres working together and one division captain assisting, the three giants and Law and Robin's offensive could be stopped. The situation is gradually turning in favor of the Don Quixote family. It's beyond my expectation for you to have such a strong fighting force, but my subordinates aren't newbies either, foo. Doflamingo teamed up with a CP0 division captain to deal with Ross. Although he was slightly inadequate, he was able to support and notice the situation on the other side. He could not help but send out a sneer, trying to influence Ross's mind. However, at this moment, Ross has already entered the state of spirit heart and his emotions are completely unaffected by foreign objects. His entire figure is like a miniature version of Whitebeard, dashing and crashing. Even Doflamingo's full awakening shield white string line can only block Ross for the time being. Buzz. Distortion light burst out, temporarily affecting Doflamingo. Ross punched and broke the shield white string line and caused Doflamingo to fly out. The blow almost stifled Doflamingo's bizarre laughter in the middle, causing him to fall apart in pink feathers and a little blood spilled from his mouth again. Your laughter is terrible, so stop laughing. Ross regains his fist with indifferent eyes and breaks through the interference of the CP0 division captain with a backhand blow and charges into Doflamingo again. Doflamingo's face turned a little black, with a faint look of anger. His hands waved violently and numerous strings converged, turning into 10 very thick spikes, with the purple armament hockey covering their tips. Don't be too arrogant, Godthread. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The holy bullets that were condensed burst out in an instant and rushed towards Ross, covering all of Ross's dodge routes. Ross was not afraid. He stepped forward and the power of distortion was activated. He grabbed several white lines and pulled them hard on both sides. The tenacious thread was torn apart by the rigid distortion. The battle is still going on. While Doflamingo was concentrating on fighting Ross with all his might, a strange force suddenly swung away from Don Quixote's underground area and instantly swept across the island. Underground factory. Lafitte stood there in a black cape, laughing and not far away from his lay Sugar with foam in her mouth caused because of her fainting. Treble stood near Sugar with an extremely ugly expression on his face. For the war against the Don Quixote family in Dressrosa, a careful plan had been drawn up as early as in the beginning. All the members of the Don Quixote family and almost all of their fighting powers were listed by Ross, and he made detailed plans for the war. So to speak, everything that happened so far is within the expected range. If you know everything about the Don Quixote family and know all the Doflamingo hidden cards and you still can't do this, then it's just questioning the IQ of Ross, Robin, and others. You are Demon Sheriff Lafitte. Treble had an angry and panicky look on his face. He had no idea that the Ghost Hand pirates would know about Sugar and would target her. This is a big trouble. Dressrosa, the country of pirates, or the country of toys, has always been a symbol of light, and the government has supported the legal plunder of it by a member of the 7 warlords of the sea, which can suppress all public opinion. But, once the darkness hidden in the light is exposed, this so-called achievement will turn into a huge scandal, which can not only destroy the status of Doflamingo's 7 warlords of the sea in an instant but also seriously damage the prestige of the government. On the ground, the exotic power gushing out after Sugar fainted has no effect on Ross and others, but it changed all the toys who are forgotten human beings. One by one, they are restored to their original shape. What happened? Doflamingo's Kenbanshoku, observation, noticed this and his face changed instantly. The CP0 division captains also perceive the changes on the island and reveals a strange expression. Toys are human beings, even they did not know that. After being turned into toys, everything about them will disappear from everyone's memories. sugar can be said to be the deepest hidden card of the Don Quixote family. It seems that my subordinates aren't newbies either. Ross calmly threw back Doflamingo's words at him. Doflamingo suddenly turned his head and looked at Ross. The pupils under the sunglasses contracted violently. His face became very ugly and his heart was shaken. There's no doubt about that. It's sugar. For the sake of safety, Trable was sent to protect sugar secretly and not to participate in the battle. It was only for the sake of safety, but unexpected, something really happened. But how did Ross know about sugar's secret? Doflamingo is no longer as calm as before. Once something happens to sugar, Dressrosa's dark screen will be instantly exposed to the whole world. The influence of public opinion will put great pressure on the government and they will definitely cancel his Shichibukai identity. The series of consequences that have been triggered are almost unimaginable. This must not be exposed at any cost. Doflamingo gritted his teeth in anger and his face became extremely depressed and various thoughts flashed through his mind and he finally showed a touch of decisiveness. Even if this island is completely destroyed and everyone is wiped out, the darkness of this country of toys cannot be exposed to the whole world. Birdcage. While blocking Ross's attack, he moved his hand and lifted it toward the sky. The earth instantly surges with a bunch of white strings and they converge toward the sky and then divides into numerous silk lines and like an umbrella, they covered the whole island. Doflamingo, what are you doing? The division captain's face changed. He didn't know about sugar, but he knew about the ability of Birdcage because Doflamingo had used it before. Doflamingo said coldly, everything here must not be exposed. You should be very clear about this. Even if you ask Gorosei, 5 elder stars, now, you will definitely get the same answer. The division captain blinked a few times. That's right. If any dark deed done by any of the 7 warlords of the sea is exposed, then it will indeed cause huge damage to the face of the government. The 7 warlords of the sea has signed a treaty with the government, which means that everything done by them shows that the government is behind them. The government will do everything in its power to stop the spread of the scandal that can harm them and cover it up. If it can't be stopped, they will definitely use Buster Call to bury all scandals on the seabed. Birdcage. Ross looked up at the sky, at the birdcage that covered the entire island of Dressrosa, and a trace of light flashed through his eyes. Everything, including this step so far, has been done in perfect accordance with his expectations. Doflamingo is just one of the purposes of this trip, and another is to let the government and Marine know. What will it cost them to force him into becoming a pirate? Almost immediately after the bird's cage covered Dressrosa, several figures came out from a boat that had been docked on the shore somewhere in Dressrosa. It has finally begun. Captain is a genius, he even predicted this situation. Kaku and others looked at the island, which was covered by various lines, and could not help but take a deep breath. It's time to work. In the next moment, several people took out the video Den Den Mushi and went to different places using Geppo, Moonwalk, and some ran along the shore of Dressrosa. The birdcage can sever all the radio waves inside the island, which is the ultimate method for Doflamingo to cover everything, but it has a small problem, that is, it has no effect on the outside of the island. Now, several people switched on the video Den Den Mushi to record the events, at the same time. Sabo di Archipelago. Khalifa opened the image Den Den Mushi. The Kingdom of Sith. Bluno turned on the image Den Den Mushi. Fleetland Island. A Sky Islander opened the image Den Den Mushi. There are 7 or 8 large islands surrounding Dressrosa and their prosperous area. Everything that happened in Dressrosa, it was projected there. Even special screens were set up in some islands such as Sabo di Archipelago by Khalifa to receive the signal directly banned to show the live scenario, so anything that will happen in Dressrosa can be instantly viewed here. Look, what is that? What a strange image, what is this? Many civilians saw the image and at first, they found these images strange, but they soon saw the innumerable scenes of slaughter and fighting in the streets of a birdcage-like island. From toys turning into humans, the ordinary civilians and scouts from various forces and even members of the Revolutionary Army, Marines, and the government people fell into chaos at the moment they watched the scenes from the Den Den Mushi. It looks like Dressrosa. That country of toys, how could it be like that? Countless people look at the projected pictures with stunned faces. They have seen this country countless times in the newspapers and it was full of sunshine and joy filled the streets, and now it has become such a hell. Like a stone falling into a calm lake, stirring up 1,000 waves. In just a few minutes, these projections began to spread all over the world. This time, the scope was too wide. By the time the world government responded, it was too late. This is the so-called enthusiastic and passionate country. The country which is developing very fast under a perfect pirate? God, what the hell are the government and Marines doing? Numerous people clenched their fists, some showed anger, some showed fear, and some were at a loss. This effect was spreading to the whole world. Marine headquarters. Damn it, Sengoku looked at the incoming picture and punched the table in front of him, causing it to crack. He shouted angrily. Who can tell me what kind of foolish thing Doflamingo is doing? Hasn't Kizaru arrived yet? At the same time, the top level of the world government, Gorosei, 5 elder stars, faces also became ugly to the extreme. Such a picture is broadcast all over the world. It's like stepping on the face of the government and crushing it for a few feet. Even if Doflamingo is destroyed and even if the ghost pirates become twice as powerful to any Yonko, 4 emperors, force, it is still nothing in the eyes of Gorosei, 5 elder stars. But the impact of such an event can be described as unprecedented, and it is almost the worst situation that has happened since they came to power. The losses are not measurable in terms of combat power anymore. No one would have thought that Dressrosa was hiding such darkness in it. What's more, the Ghost Hand Pirates announced all this in a live broadcast to the entire world. Ross's phrase, "You're 5 idiots," some time ago, is just like the sole of a shoe now that is slapping their faces hard at this moment. How can they salvage the situation? The 5 people almost began to think about how to salvage the situation in the first place, but this kind of event that has spread so wide is not something they can cover up by simply arranging some lies. Idiots. Cut off all the signals right now. 5. Sir Gorsei, 5 elder stars. This event is being broadcasted on many islands at the same time. We cannot cut off all the signal at the same time. There was a trace of anxiousness on the face of government officials. The Gorosei, 5 elder stars, bit his teeth. Then cut them off one by one. Let the Marines also move out. Make sure that the impact is kept to a minimum range. At this moment, the broadcast picture began to become more and more wicked. Doflamingo had tried to slaughter the entire island to cover up the truth. The CP0 of the government subordinates also assisted him, and even the Vice Admiral Virgo, who represents the Marine side, is assisting Doflamingo in his massacre. Let CP0 and Marine stop for the time being. No signal, we have no way to contact them. Doflamingo's birdcage now completely isolates the interior of Dressrosa, making the 2-division captain, and the Marines unable to hear the government's orders and signals, and they do not know that everything is being broadcast to all over the world. They are still in a bloody massacre of unknown origin. At that moment, an official rushed over with panic on his face and said, "Not good, the broadcast was also found in Kel Island, and Nicket Island." What? Gorosei, 5 elder stars, faces changed again. It has been 10 minutes since the incident broke out. As a result, the broadcast has not been fully disconnected and it is growing and spreading. It's the Revolutionary Army, that bunch of bastards. A curse escaped from the mouth of a high-level government official. At this time, not only the Revolutionary Army but also those who are oppressed by the government and hate the government, are all too keen to seize this opportunity, such as this kind of thing that can cause serious damage to the government without any hard work. Why not seize it? In a short period of time, the scope of broadcasting not only failed to be contained but grew larger and larger, spreading to the world as the more time passed. The whole battlefield of Dressrosa is in front of the world. Facing the world. Inside the birdcage. Except for Ross and his people, nobody knows what's happening right now. The current events are being broadcasted all over the world, whether it's Doflamingo, CP0 or Virgo. Everyone in the world is watching them without them even knowing about it. I don't know where you got this information. You know the secrets of Dressrosa, Ghost Hand Ross, but in that case, we can only completely bury this secret on this island. Doflamingo spoke in a cold voice, waved his hands, and the whole street turned into innumerable white silk strings, sweeping madly towards Ross. Boom! Ross was suspended in midair, and with a backhand wave, the white strings were disturbed by the power of distortion. It's almost time. Not telling Doflamingo what happened, nor telling CP0 what happened, because Ross now doesn't care about all the enemies on this island. What he wanted was a wave that will spread all over the world, striking fiercely on the face of the world government and Marines. Since they claim to be just, he will completely open up the dark side of the so-called justice. Distortion. Sonic explosion. Ross's eyes shimmered in the light, and the sound exploded. Almost instantly, the loud hoarse sound exploded in the ears of Doflamingo and the CP0 division captain, making both of their eardrum buzz and causing them to get dizzy. Ross dived down towards Doflamingo, and before he arrived, his fist wrapped in the power of distortion fell in midair. Buzz. The air was hit, and getting a distortion shape, the fist slammed down. Under the influence of sonic boom, Doflamingo could not control the ability of String Awakening. He could not defend against Ross's strike with a white shield line. He could only lay his arms on top of his head and use armament hockey on them in an attempt to resist Ross's attack. But Doflamingo wasn't able to resist Luffy in his fourth gear with armament hockey alone, and Ross's current attack power is even stronger than Luffy's fourth gear. Bang! The earth under Doflamingo's feet suddenly collapsed. Blood flew from his mouth and his whole body was slightly distorted. He crashed into the bottom of the pit he created. Damn it! CP0 Division Captain got rid of the impact of the sonic boom and saw this scene and was surprised. Although he doesn't know what happened to Doflamingo, that was a really heavy blow. Diamante was aware of the crisis and tried to rush in to help, but was forcibly stopped by Kairos, who had rushed out of the darkness and had changed from a toy to a human figure. The other division captain tried to rush over, but he was attacked by Haruden and was contained in midair and could not get rid of Haruden's speed. As for Virgo and others, they are farther away and have no time to support. Cough, cough. At the bottom of the pit, Doflamingo's sunglasses showed signs of fragmentation. He coughed violently and bled constantly from his mouth. He didn't expect Ross to have such strength to make him use armament hockey to resist a blow, and he also did not expect to receive such injuries from Ross's attack even after he used armament hockey. Shield White String. Watching Ross dive down from the sky, Doflamingo takes a breath and displays the white shield string, and at the same time, he also used the spider's web, a double defense against Ross's attack. At the same time, he exerted the ability of string fruits to repair his injuries and temporarily restrained and replaced his distortion muscles with strings. Bang! Bang! Ross's fist fell and the white string shield collapsed in half. Another fist fell and the white string shield collapsed completely, followed by a footfall. The innumerable cobwebs of the spider's web showed a terrible distorted shape, sinking towards the bottom of the pit, and then one by one the tension broke off. The CP0 division captain tried to come and help, but Ross shook him off with a backhand punch. He did not have the ability to block Ross in a positive way. Only when Doflamingo blocked Ross, he was able to make some involvement by virtue of his physique and speed. Whiz! Doflamingo grabbed his finger, cut the line off the ground near him, flew from one side and fled to the distance, bringing the speed to his limit. Ross's Kenbanshoku, observation, had already perceived Doflamingo's escape movement, and he calmly followed him, chasing him all the way. It's not easy to completely defeat and kill someone at Doflamingo's level. If he wants to escape, even a Marine Admiral won't be able to stop him, much less killing him. But, now in the interior of the birdcage, coupled with his injuries, Ross's airspeed is no less than his and the escape conditions are not available. Where would he escape to? That is, Doflamingo and Ghost Hand Ross. The civilians of Dressrosa, at this moment, saw the crazy escape in the sky. Doflamingo was using his strings to trap Ross and trying to escape his pursuit, but behind him, Ross was unstoppable. Wherever any string hit him, it was broken by Ross. By this time, everyone knows the truth behind Dressrosa, and the highly popular Doflamingo has become the embodiment of evil and demon. Kill Doflamingo. Hurry up and end it all. Looking at the approaching birdcage, many civilians were angry, crying and praying. Nearly 7 hours have passed since Ross and his party boarded Dressrosa to fight Don Quixote family. The result is that Doflamingo is completely defeated and Don Quixote family is in a festering defeat. If you want to escape, you have to remove the birdcage, but if you remove the birdcage, everything here will be made public, and you will lose Don Quixote family and all your status. Ross followed Doflamingo in the air and continued to pull closer and said with a cold voice, and his words affected Doflamingo's mind. Doflamingo was also aware of the situation and he was grinding his teeth constantly. He did not expect Ross to push him to this level, but in his view, there was still hope. As long as a Marine Admiral can arrive on time. Seeing that words could hardly affect Doflamingo, Ross stopped talking and caught up calmly. After a blow broke the thread of Doflamingo's defense, the aftermath of the power of distortion finally reached Doflamingo's back. Doflamingo staggered in the air, bleeding again from his mouth. He flew forward and crashed through a building. He forced a change of direction and continued to escape. Whiz! Whiz! Ross is well aware of Doflamingo's current state. If he takes at most one attack like that, he will lose the ability to escape. If he takes 2 more strikes, he's basically not far from death. Keeping up with Doflamingo and walking through the streets, Ross kept breaking through the cobwebs made by Doflamingo and drew closer and punched out again. Boom! Doflamingo's entire body slammed forward and a large amount of blood spilled from his mouth. This time he was finally unable to escape and his figure swayed as he fell to the side. At this time, Doflamingo landed near the edge of the cage, and the center of the cage was shrinking here. He stumbled to the ground, but when he landed, he was stunned as he took an inadvertent glance, because the cage had been contracted for a long time, and there was not much room left and he can see everything that is happening outside the cage. Just outside the birdcage, he saw a figure walking in the air using Geppo, moonwalk, holding a Den Mushi in his hand, and recording something in the direction. Doflamingo stared. He is a person who is good at strategy and calculation. Almost instantaneously, a terrible thought came into his mind. Does it mean that everything about Dressrosa is being broadcasted live? Ross slowly fell behind Doflamingo, glanced outside the birdcage to look at Kaku who is holding the video Den Mushi and his gaze returned to Doflamingo. Doflamingo's expressions were stiff as he turned his head a little bit and looked at Ross. If, from the beginning to this moment, even though he had completely lost the chance to escape, he still had no fear of Ross, then when he realized that everything in Dressrosa had been recorded by the Den Mushi outside the cage, a trace of fear finally arose in his heart. How could this be? This is not about the gap in strength anymore, but it is as if every step he took was already anticipated by Ross and he prepared counters for those steps. His plans were completely seen by Ross from head to toe and anything he do will become Ross's further design. It is as if in the course of the game with his opponent, he found that every move he took was designed by his opponent, and everything that happened from beginning to end is within his opponent's calculation. Doflamingo's body is stiff and his heart is cold. The only person who can make him feel this way is Great Staff Officer Suru of Marine Headquarters. That is the reason he turns his head every time he sees a crane, because in the past he was almost beaten and killed in his confrontations with her. Each and every step he took were accurately predicted by the other. Now, there's one more person like this and that is Ross in front of him. Looks like you found something. Unfortunately, you are almost finished, and then it's time to contribute your final role. Ross gazed calmly at Doflamingo, stepping forward with a knife-like arm, slanting toward Doflamingo. Doflamingo has already lost his ability to resist. See. With a power of distortion knife, Doflamingo's head was cut off in an instant, rolling down to the ground not far away, and the pair of sunglasses broke. 7 warlords of the sea, Heavenly Yaksha, Doflamingo, has been hunted and killed, earned a reward, 25 talent proficiency points, 1 free talent point. Listening to the synthesized system sound coming from his ear, Ross breathed in his heart. Although there was not much proficiency, he got 1 free talent point and it more than made up for all the preparations. With Doflamingo's death, the birdcage that covered the entire Dressrosa quickly dissipated, and the scene was clearly broadcasted to all over the world. Kaku watched the birdcage dissipate and took a video to Den Mushi and flew closer to Ross. Ross saw the nearby Kaku and looked at the video of Den Mushi. He knew that the footage recorded by Den Mushi should be broadcast live to the world. He looked calm. You should know everything about Dressrosa. But what I want to say is that I am not a savior, it's just that I can't get used to the fact that some people get away with these things, so I'll make the darkness public. That's all. With such a sentence, Ross turned and disappeared into the ruined streets. Kaku and others did not close the video Den Mushi, but looked at the ruins of Dressrosa, found several better locations on the ruins, fixed the video Den Mushi that will now continue to record the follow-up battle situation of Dressrosa without them. On the chaotic battlefield in front of the palace, the Den Mushi rang on the bodies of the 2 CP0 division captain as soon as the birdcage disappeared. What did you say? Hearing the words coming from the other end of the Den Mushi, their faces hidden under the masks changed instantaneously, only to feel a sense of coolness pouring on their bodies from head to toe as if they had been thrown a basin of ice water. As the division captains of CP0, they are naturally aware of the consequences that will follow by making this whole thing public. This is probably a real hit on the world government in 800 years. The birdcage has disappeared. On the other side, Virgo, wearing the justice cloak of Vice Admiral, Marine Branch, watched the disappearance of the cage in the sky, and his heart sank. He knew what the disappearance of the cage meant. At this time, the Den Mushi on his body rang. In silence, he received the Den Mushi, and a cold voice with repressed anger like a volcanic eruption came from the other side. "Do you know what stupid thing you did, Vice Admiral Virgo?" After hearing the news from the other side of Den Den Mushi, Virgo was just like the CP0 division captains and others, and he instantly felt ice running from his head to toe. Even if Doflamingo is defeated, as long as they're all alive, there is still a chance to make a comeback with the identity of an original Tenryubito and the core of the Dark World trade. But, if everything that happened in Dressrosa is made public, then Doflamingo will be completely finished. The government would not be able to tolerate such events at all. With the government's style of action, they are bound to push the matter out of ignorance and all onto Doflamingo, in order to save the face of the government as much as possible. It's over. Virgo was standing still in the same place, and he knew that this time it was completely over. Dressrosa's battle continues. Ross spends almost a third of his stamina against Doflamingo. After killing Doflamingo, Ross took part in the battle against the Don Quixote family. After receiving the news from the government, the two CP0 division captains gave up on the Don Quixote family decisively and escaped one step ahead of time. Sneer! Lafitte's mahogany cane penetrated Treble's heart, and their battle ended up narrowly victorious by Lafitte, who himself suffered minor injuries. He gasped for a moment, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and watched Treble fall to the ground. He smiled slyly and picked up Sugar, who had not yet woken up.